Time passed quickly once they returned to the classroom, and a week later, things had somewhat stabilized. The students who once trembled after being forced to take a life were now calmer, some even joked around a bit. As for Adele, he had been secretly practicing a new skill, soul transfer, and just in time, as the teachers kept reminding everyone about the midterm exams. He glanced around the room. In the novel, the first-year students from Saitan actually launched an attack on the Royal Academy during the midterms. That meant something big was about to happen, likely involving an assault on the human kingdom. His eyes narrowed. How many of them would survive? That was the real question, and honestly, one worth pondering. Just then, something caught his attention. Luna was secretly watching him from across the room, but the moment their eyes met, she startled and quickly looked away. That reaction didn't escape Adele's notice, and he raised an eyebrow, a flicker of curiosity crossing his face. What was going on? What was it about her that made her look like that? Unable to contain his curiosity, Adele stepped forward and gently tapped her on the shoulder. The sudden touch made her jump. "Adele, you startled me," Luna exclaimed, spinning around. Adele looked at her calmly, almost playfully. "You didn't answer, so I thought I'd sneak a little closer. You look strange, is something wrong?" Your words hit a sensitive spot. Luna immediately panicked, waving her hands to deny it, saying, "No, nothing's wrong." But that reaction only made Adele more suspicious. "Really?" he asked, his voice full of doubt. Luna nodded so vigorously it looked almost cartoonish. "Really, I swear." Seconds passed, and Adele sighed inwardly. She was definitely hiding something, but instead of pressuring her, he gave her an out. "Want to have lunch together?" Luna blinked in surprise. "Lunch?" Adele nodded, "unless you have other plans." Her face quickly blossomed into a relieved smile. "No, no, let's have lunch together," she replied eagerly. That made Adele nod in satisfaction. "I'll wait at the cafeteria entrance at noon." Her reaction, especially the warmth in her eyes, reassured him. She looked more relaxed, a little fragile but approachable. She wasn't afraid of him anymore. It seemed he had earned some points with her. Lunchtime arrived. Adele waited outside the cafeteria but saw no sign of Luna. He checked the time again, frowning. The lunch break was almost over. Where had she gone? He sighed. "I don't usually eat alone, but it seems I have no other choice." "Well then, back to the dorm and keep training." Disappointed, he turned to leave, but after a few steps, he paused. Two familiar figures are approaching from across the street, Renee and Diana. "Oh no," your mind nearly shuts down, "not now." Without hesitation, Adele activates his teleportation skill and vanishes in a flash of energy just before being spotted. Almost caught, Renee stops, instincts warning her. She narrows her eyes to scan the area. Diana steps a few paces ahead, notices, and turns back. Diana asks, "What's wrong, Renee?" From Renee's side, she glances over the area one last time, finding nothing suspicious, then turns to Diana. "I thought I just saw my escort, I must have imagined it." Meanwhile, a few bushes away, Adele is crouched low, his heart pounding. Why are they here? His thoughts swirl in confusion. This pair is the worst-case scenario. I've already heard enough in Oregon. If they find out I'm a descendant of the arson family, I'm as good as dead. His mind replays memories. I'm not just a side character in this story, I play a central role in the downfall of the Demon Kingdom. More than that, I killed the Demon King, both him and his wife. If that truth is revealed, it's the end of everything. Adele bites his lip and slowly crawls away from the area. Only after putting enough distance does he finally let out a sigh of relief. That was dangerously close. He looks around the small forest behind the cafeteria and smirks. This place isn't bad, much better than the cramped dorm room. Maybe this will become my new training ground. Just as he prepares to start, a steel clang breaks the silence, high-pitched, desperate, and heartbreakingly familiar. Adele lifts his head. That voice is Luna's. Without hesitation, he rushed toward the sound. When he reached a small clearing, the scene before him made his blood run cold. Luna stood there, tears streaming down her face, her voice trembling, begging him to stop, to please stop. Witnessing the young girl being bullied by the crowd made Adele's blood boil dangerously. She turned to him with a glimmer of hope, trying to hold herself together. Adele observed the thugs and realized they were classmates. He almost fully understood the situation unfolding. With a voice filled with barely concealed anger, he demanded the thugs return to the classroom. They were definitely bullying Luna, while everyone here was also a demi-human. The leader of the thugs had been resisting from the start, refusing to acknowledge Adele's authority. As the class president, these guys had no real guts, thinking they couldn't handle a 3-on-1 situation. But they were quickly proven wrong. With pure mana brimming with deadly intent, Adele grabbed one thug and choked him without even touching. The remaining two were panic-stricken, sensing the terrifying hostility from their class president. These fools dared oppose him but were immobilized just by a hint of his lethal intent. He dropped the thug to the ground, looking down at the miserable worm. Suddenly, Adele realized he had underestimated a thug standing on the sidelines. The man with a spiderweb birthmark on his cheek showed no fear, even calmly analyzing each of Adele's moves. After teaching one of them a lesson, Adele advised the thugs to stop disgracing themselves and to run away. Hearing them bark more, he issued the final warning. One last chance for them to shut up. It was still lunchtime, and he didn't want to see their innards before the meal. Casually walking away, the three fools retreated with their tails tucked between their legs. The boy with the spiderweb tattoo remained calm and composed, cautiously watching Adele. Such calmness was unusual for a trainee. Besides Luna, perhaps Class A had another rough gem. When the gang left, Luna ran to the person who saved her, expressing sincere gratitude. Having been held back too long, their lunch appointment had to be postponed. Class was about to start, so they needed to hurry back. Adele heard that today they would learn real magic, so he didn't want to be late. Day by day, Luna felt closer to her fox-eyed boy. A few minutes later, Teacher Robolt entered the classroom, and excitedly announced that they would begin learning magic for practical situations. Today they would focus on two techniques, invisibility and silence. These two techniques should not fall into the hands of perverts. Incidentally, they were also Adele's specialty. The purpose of learning these two techniques was simple: how to deal with someone stronger than you on the battlefield. Sometimes the only way was assassination. For some, these dark methods were not a choice but a necessity. Currently, no trainee in Class A could defeat a human hero in a direct fight. To begin, Robolt demonstrated invisibility magic. He carefully explained how to cyclically heat their demon tattoos and gradually release mana. Despite the low purity of mana, they had to strive to evenly spread a thin and uniform mana coating all over their bodies. Failure to do so would result in failure. After flawlessly completing all the steps, the teacher seemed to vanish without a trace. That must be the reason no one noticed when Robolt entered during Adele's fight with Samuel. The teacher appeared right where he had disappeared. He assigned the students the task of wrapping mana around their bodies. First, they had to close their eyes and fully concentrate on handling mana precisely and with difficulty. This step required time and patience. Even if they accidentally succeeded after several attempts, the caster could still see their own body. Each student tried their best to focus all their willpower and control mana toward this task. Robolt estimated it would probably take more than a day for any of these kids to achieve some success. One of the outstanding students was Prone. She had deep lineage and good control abilities, unsurprising for a child of the 7 deadly sins. More impressively, Samuel, the boy known for his rebelliousness, showed astonishing control. His body had begun to fade. He must have a natural talent for this technique. For ordinary students, a week of practice is the threshold to feel the complexity of invisibility. Prone and Samuel were already at a genius level. While busy praising the rich kids, Robolt noticed a prominent student was absent from class. The boy with the chaotic attribute whom Ares had warned him about. Looking at Adele's seat, his physical form had completely disappeared. He remembered the boy sitting there when the lecture began. While the teacher was mentally panicked, Adele easily maintained his invisibility spell without much effort, thanks to the innate talent of his body. Invisibility magic was too easy to master. He was even thinking of how to combine the chaotic attribute with it. The invisibility and assassination skills discussed today were not enough to deal with truly strong opponents. He needed a more powerful way to kill. When returning to the dormitory, Adele was stopped by Teacher Robolt in the hallway. He just wanted to know if Adele had ever practiced magic before entering Saitan. Seeing no harm in it, Adele admitted he was new to magic but could always use his innate talent. Realizing he had a generational talent in hand, Robolt invited Adele to visit his laboratory regularly. He praised Adele's outstanding potential in magic and the untapped abilities of his rare chaotic attribute. Adele might be very skilled in assassination, but exploring other directions wouldn't hurt. Since he already had plans today, he promised to visit Robolt's lab another time. This would help his school life if he continued to maintain the facade of a magical genius. Sitting in the dormitory, Adele needed to handle something before the midterm exam began. To do so, he required a technique that surpassed mere invisibility. Samuel was absent. This was the perfect time to practice. If events were as in his novel, then a human spy must be hiding within the demon kingdom. He could not let that person discover him. Adele needed to find and kill that spy at any cost. A high-level spy would be very difficult to handle, so mastering the trump card was key. Surpassing simple invisibility, he intended to both exist and not exist at the same time. With the perfect combination of compatible attributes and mastery of basic invisibility magic, he succeeded after only a few attempts. This technique was so effective that he could no longer see himself. As his existence and presence faded away, Adele felt a grim premonition. Perhaps he had overdone the non-existence part of this technique, and now, he was struggling to breathe. His body felt strange, and his instinct urged him to dispel this dangerous magic. When trying to disperse the mana, he found that he could not forcibly shut it off. He needed to do it immediately, or he would truly disappear from existence forever. Focusing all his strength to regain control over the mana, he managed to dispel the modified invisibility spell after many efforts. In that state, his sense of time and all his senses became dim. It was truly a terrifying feeling to lose control. Furthermore, his mana was severely depleted, making it difficult to stop this annihilation technique. If not controlled in time, he could have been completely swallowed into the void. This experience made him understand why the ancestors warned about being engulfed by the power of chaos. Nonetheless, he could not give up such a promising trump card. A completely new technique, combining a famous spell with chaotic attributes, would be a deadly weapon in his hands. He called it absolute invisibility. Suddenly, while gasping for breath from exhaustion, his annoying roommate rushed in and kicked him forcefully. Samuel shouted angrily, but Adele couldn't understand a single word he said. Thinking back, he couldn't even hear his own voice. The worst-case scenario crept into his mind. Had he lost his hearing? After everything settled down in the dormitory and his hearing returned, Adele decided to continue practicing the new technique in the outskirts of Saitan. This time, he controlled absolute invisibility better. Fortunately, this time the backlash did not cause him to lose hearing but rather vision. Now he was certain that using absolute invisibility must come at the cost of losing one or two senses. He experimented and refined this spell for a whole week, going through losses of hearing, taste, touch, and now vision. Fortunately, these drawbacks only lasted about 2 hours each time. The bad thing is you can't choose or know in advance which sense will be lost. Currently, this technique is only safe for about 3 seconds. In other words, it's almost useless. A high-risk technique with low benefits is not worth it. Perhaps Adele could unlock this technique if he ensured a killing blow. Besides practicing absolute invisibility, he also tried combining chaotic attributes with others but was unsuccessful. The most straightforward way to get stronger right now is to train swordsmanship and mana. Without sight, he was stuck in the forest for 2 hours without seeing anything. Because he was used to coming early in the morning, he wasn't worried about being late for class. Class A is managed by the strict teacher, Aries. After regaining his vision, Adele was forced to line up and run as if his life depended on it. Weeks have passed, and the class consisted only of physical exercises instead of learning how to use the sword. After a grueling physical training session, Aries ordered the students to gather. As the class leader, Adele was used to conveying orders from the teacher to his classmates. Of course, this always annoyed the muscular guy, still bitter because he was assigned this important role. After clearing his throat, Aries announced that they would reduce the time for physical training to start formal swordsmanship lessons. Adele was not the only student pleased to hear that the running sessions would be reduced. Today's swordsmanship class would begin with a demonstration. As he drew his sword, Aries signaled the class leader to step forward. Adele had no choice but to comply. Aries rudely asked if he could already channel mana into his sword. Adele honestly replied that he could. Aries sternly ordered him to put his full strength and mana into the sword and attack. To create an advantage, the teacher would not use mana, relying solely on raw strength. Knowing this hateful personality, he was certainly aiming to stage a humiliating scene for Adele. Before attacking, Adele confirmed that Aries would only use the sword. Under that condition, he drew his trusted dagger. Although permitted to use mana, employing his innate traits might be excessive. Currently, he wanted to probe the teacher's level. From the start, he noticed Aries' stance had no exploitable openings. In the human realm, he would be at a high expert level. But in the demon kingdom, swordsmanship is mainly assessed by the amount of mana infused into the weapon. Rank meant nothing here. Infusing mana into a weapon was not easy. Adele knew the teacher was underestimating his abilities, slightly wounding his pride. If so, he just had to exceed expectations. Charging forward like an arrow, Adele aimed at the right carotid artery to kill. Of course, the opening strike was not easy. Aries effortlessly evaded by shifting his angle. The second part of the attack began as he twisted the dagger's handle, whipping it back with a swift follow-up strike, confident he could deliver a fatal blow. Aries stared at him and insulted his unfinished technique. The teacher flexed his muscular biceps and caught the dagger without raising his sword to defend. Then a savage counterattack to the spine made Adele fall to the floor. Classmates witnessed Aries using excessive force in a simple demonstration. Adele's fall created a large hole on the training ground. He coughed and gasped for breath. His lungs collapsed from the ruthless counterattack. Not stopping there, Aries raised his sword, seemingly aiming at the trainee's neck with a murderous intent radiating out. Adele felt death approaching. From the crowd, Luna anxiously called his name. With one hand lifting the heavy sword above his head, Aries brought down a powerful strike aimed to cause destruction. The impact shattered the training ground floor. Even Samuel realized this was too violent for a swordsmanship lesson. If that rebellious kid felt that way, something was clearly wrong. Fortunately, Adele managed to channel mana into his body and rolled out of the affected area. Thanks to quick reflexes, he timely pushed the sword aside just in time to survive that brutality. A moment sooner or later, he would have been cut in half. Aries sensed a disturbance in his sword blade. Adele stood up to confront the muscular man for trying to kill a student without reason. Aries pulled the dagger out of his chest as if it were nothing and calmly denied the accusation. He threw Adele's dagger to the floor and ordered him back in line. Shut up. Then the wretched teacher asked the class president how it felt to fight directly against someone at his level. Adele did not beat around the bush, asserting that what happened was the tactic of the weak. He further explained that he was allowed to use mana, but the opponent imposed limits on himself. He deduced that Aries wanted to demonstrate to the entire class that the only way for the weak to defeat the stronger is to be willing to sacrifice themselves to deal damage. According to Adele's estimation, Aries could have easily dodged his final blow, but he deliberately endured the blade as if it had been planned from the start. Surprisingly, Aries acknowledged that he had given the correct answer. He wanted to deeply imprint in the students' minds that the human world is full of terrifyingly strong individuals, almost impossible to defeat without taking risks. Monsters must lure these strong ones into a state of complacency and, when necessary, boldly expose weaknesses to seize the chance for a surprise attack. What he teaches is not the noble art of swordsmanship. In the real world and actual warfare, such things do not exist. Aries will not teach students flashy sword techniques, only what helps win. From now on, they will not be limited to swords. This is a weapons class. He implied that death does not matter, as long as victory is achieved. Aries is planting this idea for the midterm exam. Now, the human royal school's teachers are surely on high alert. Human spies must have detected the current situation in Saitan. In the novel, Saitan's students will fall like straw. Meanwhile, the royal school students will remain safe. Aries might suspect Adele of being a spy. To prove his innocence, he must find the real traitor first. After the showy performance, Aries dismissed the trainees. While the others returned to class in an orderly fashion, Adele stood still in place. Aries looked at him with annoyance and asked if he intended to rebel over what had just happened. Adele smiled to deny such a ridiculous thought, but when Aries turned his back, his covert hostility ignited. He couldn't rely on someone who suspected him of being a spy. Aries was also disgusted by the cruel, assassin-like expression that Adele had shown from day one. He could no longer suppress it, as the assassin instinct had completely merged into his being. It was necessary to gain the authority and status needed to suppress the power of the 7 deadly sins. However, if Aries continued to cross the line as he did on the training field, Adele would do everything to make that muscle-bound guy face the consequences. While scheming revenge against the teacher, Luna approached and sensed a slight murderous aura leaking from him. Adele apologized for startling her again, saying it wasn't intentional this time. She came to make up for the time they had planned to have lunch together before. Maybe today was the right day. Adele happily agreed, brightening Luna's face. In the dining hall, they ordered extravagant dishes befitting nobles. It had been a long time since he had eaten anything so luxurious, even for lunch. With the table full of delicious dishes, Luna worried that leaving food uneaten might anger the gluttony deity. As they were about to eat, the group of thugs who had been taught a lesson earlier entered. They took notice of Adele and Luna. But before they could cause trouble, Adele smiled and waved, prompting the 3 fools to decide not to get involved. Unlike the other 2, the spider boy remained captivated by Adele. He took the opportunity to ask Luna what had happened with those 3. She confessed that she had been bullied by other half-demons. She didn't know why, she only knew they started teasing her at some point. She blamed herself for being weak and lacking special physical abilities. Perhaps she didn't realize the true value of her healing power. Luna added that the 3 never hit her, only cursed at her as they passed by and occasionally took her money. Hearing about the terrible situation she endured, Adele advised Luna to always stay close to him from now on. Luna insisted she didn't need protection, only to prove she wasn't betraying the monsters. But that was all the more reason for them to stick together since Adele wanted to investigate. He asked Luna what she knew about the boy with the spider web tattoo. According to Luna, his name was Kyle. Hearing the name, Adele's memory recalled a character named Kyle in a novel. Adele probed further. He knew Kyle was a pure demon but mingled with half-demons. In Luna's eyes, he was especially terrifying. He looked at her as if she were a disgusting bug. Wasn't that how they used to look at humans in Oregon? Kyle immediately climbed to the top of his spy suspect list, briefly considering asking for an information sheet to confirm, but that might just be a waste of money. To avoid more headaches, it was better to check personally. After all, he already had plenty of related data about this spy. Adele stood up and walked over to the table of the 3 idiots, greeting them politely. They immediately reacted with a mixture of fear and hostility, while Kyle remained indifferent. Incidentally, Adele mentioned having heard about a girl in the first year of the royal school. Kyle continued sitting, focused on his meal. Adele added that the girl was a half-demon with one living relative, a brother. At that moment, he sensed Kyle burning with anger in his seat. To provoke a reaction from the suspect, Adele mentioned the name Ray with a malicious tone. At that moment, Kyle must have realized that his disguise had been exposed and it was a far bigger problem than he had anticipated. Things were about to go too far. The green-haired guy with eyes flashing with aggression stepped closer, his firm hand gripping Adele's shoulder tightly, shouting angrily, can't you get lost somewhere else? As soon as he finished, with eyes cold as ice, Adele tightened his grasp on the man's tie, pulled hard and slammed him down onto the wooden table where Kyle sat. The impact rang out like thunder, cracking the surface, splinters flying everywhere. The green-haired guy fell heavily, his mind spinning, eyes blurred from dizziness, blood trickling from a tear on his forehead. Before he could regain composure, Adele expertly twisted his wrist, his sharp gaze like a blade, speaking in a low, threatening tone, so it turns out that guy was real. On the ground, the green-haired guy clutched his head tightly, blood streaming between his fingers, screaming in pain, his voice trembling with fear and humiliation. Right after Adele's words, Kyle held back the storm of anger raging inside him and slowly stood up. His eyes ashen, deep like a suppressed storm, revealing no emotion whatsoever. Without a word, Kyle quietly turned and walked away, his tall figure casting a shadow against the dimly lit corridor. Seeing that action, Adele silently confirmed in his heart, a subtle smile flickering across his lips, found it. The three of them left, gathering in an old restroom, the weak light from the flickering fluorescent lamp on the ceiling. The blue-haired guy's face was still smeared with blood, aggressively washing his wound under the cold water, his hands trembling with anger. Suddenly, he slammed his fist against the wall, the impact echoed in the cramped space. He growled through clenched teeth, "Damn it, it's that cursed half-blood again." Then he turned to Kyle, eyes blazing with fire, continuing to shout, "Will you take revenge?" Kyle remained silent, his cold eyes staring into space as if lost in deep, secret calculations. Seeing the silence, the blue-haired guy grew even more furious, stepping closer with a hardening voice, "What's this? Why aren't you answering?" Kyle still didn't speak, his face as still as a stone statue. At the peak of his anger, the blue-haired man lunged forward, shouting, "You're the untrustworthy one among the half-demons, yet you're the one talking to them. Now you plan to abandon us." He grabbed Kyle by the neck and yelled, "You cowardly bastard." But as soon as he finished speaking, Kyle, like a provoked beast, spun around with terrifying speed, grabbed the blue-haired man's head, and slammed it hard against the brick wall. The dry crunch echoed along with the blue-haired guy's pained cries. Unrelenting, Kyle's face twisted with rage. He continued banging the man's head against the wall, each blow as rhythmic as the heartbeat of a destructive machine. The wall began to crack and shatter, debris falling heavily to the floor. The blonde-haired guy stood beside them, his face pale, watching the scene in horror. Finally, when the wall was stained with blood splatters, Kyle stopped, still gripping the green-haired man's head tightly, his voice low and filled with murderous intent. "These pesky vermin are really troublesome." The blonde man stammered tremblingly, "Hey Kyle, what are you doing?" At this moment, Kyle seemed to become a different person, his bloodshot eyes flashing like fresh blood, grinding his teeth as he looked at the blonde man, who cowered in fear to the floor. Kyle growled in a voice cold as ice, "Get out of my sight before I kill you all." The two hurriedly helped each other, staggering away from the restroom, leaving Kyle standing alone in the quiet space. He walked to the faucet and washed his face, the cold water helped him regain some sobriety. Looking into the mirror, his face reflected faintly, Kyle murmured to himself, how could he possibly know, the illusion that reduces awareness and the camouflage spell still function perfectly. Cast by the best sorcerer, moreover, being a half-demon, the chance of his identity being exposed was extremely low. Could it be that he was also a spy sent by humans? But no, the bear's family had secured his identity. A haunting question arose in Kyle's mind, "Adele, who exactly are you, and how do you know about my sister?" His eyes grew fierce, deadly thoughts rising. He cursed silently, it would be best to kill him before he reveals his identity. Night fell, in the dormitory shrouded in darkness, Kyle placed several weapons on an old wooden table, the light from an oil lamp glinting off the sharp blades. He checked each item, his fingers lightly gliding over the metal surface to ensure perfect sharpness, silently calculating that to kill him he must be thoroughly prepared. First, he needed to send the information he had gathered. His identity seemed to have been discovered by Adele. Just as he was about to write a letter, the door suddenly swung open, Adele barging in with a loud push, causing Kyle to startle and turn around. Adele, looking exhausted as if having just run a marathon, sighed softly, "Haha, that was nearly late." Kyle's sharp eyes questioned, "How did you find this place?" Adele adjusted his outfit and smiled comfortably, "Tonight is truly beautiful." As Adele stepped closer, Kyle hesitated not at all, and flung the pen he was holding fiercely toward him, shouting, "Damn your head, if it weren't for you, tonight would have been peaceful." The pen flew swiftly, but Adele easily dodged and caught it, his tone still calm, "Too difficult, huh?" Immediately after, a sudden explosion sounded behind Adele, startling him. A brilliant yellow energy beam shot forward like lightning. Adele quickly dodged. Realizing Kyle had taken the initiative to attack, he smiled mockingly, "Dual element energy orb magic, huh? Not even bothering to hide your identity now. If you are using magic, you must be a half-demon and your current form is fake." Kyle did not deny it, replying coldly, "Yes, even this secret place you found, so you have understood everything already." Adele smiled, his eyes sparkling, probably so. Kyle angrily unleashed several more magical strikes at Adele, shouting loudly, "How do you know about Ray?" With astonishing agility, Adele spun to dodge each attack. While running, he thought, even in this situation, he was still worried about his younger sister first. Which was understandable. Kyle was not acting out of concern for humanity, but for a younger sister with a peculiar constitution, whose magical energy was concentrated in her heart with reserves beyond endurance to cure a terminal illness. He had allied with humanity, and faced with Adele's defensive dodging, Kyle continued to unleash fierce magical attacks, yelling, "Answer me quickly." Adele did not resist, he only dodged. But a thought flickered in his mind, why not dig out the truth completely? A smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. He adjusted his clothes and calmly said, "How would I know? How could I possibly know? I haven't even met your sister. And that pitiful smile of hers, just before she cries, is beautiful, so beautiful I want to crush it." Hearing this, Kyle trembled with anger. His eyes were bloodshot, lips tightly pressed, the energy inside him erupting like a volcano about to blow. He could no longer hold back and growled, "You damn bastard." Adele remained composed and replied, "To be precise, you should say, spy, that bastard Cerberus fits better." The insult was like pouring oil on the fire. Kyle clenched his fists tightly and shouted, "Shut up." He stretched both hands forward, gathering into a massive magical orb surrounded by blinding light, and shouted, "I will extract all the information you know before I kill you." Noticing that the opponent was losing control just as predicted, Adele smiled inwardly. He had walked right into the trap. He turned, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "Go ahead, try if you can." Kyle immediately hurled the magic orb toward him at a terrifying speed, but Adele was not caught off guard. In the blink of an eye, he used a position-swapping skill, causing the energy orb and his position to exchange places. The wall behind where he had just stood trembled from a violent explosion, shrouded in dense smoke and dust. Kyle was stunned by the opponent's ability, muttering to himself, "So you can teleport instantaneously, even seeing it with my own eyes, it's hard to believe." Adele smiled in response. "Almost right, you've investigated me so thoroughly, so you must already know everything, don't you?" Kyle gradually regained his composure and said, "So that means you've known my identity all along, right?" Adele nodded. "That understanding should suffice, I suppose." Kyle's cold glare drew closer, his voice dropping. "Understood." In this situation, Adele thought to himself that finally he realized there was no chance of winning. But contrary to his thoughts, Kyle gritted his teeth as a massive surge of magical power erupted around him. Countless yellow magic orbs appeared, enveloped by flashing lightning bolts that shook the very space. This sudden action startled Adele, and his eyes flashed with vigilance against the opponent's terrifying power. Seeing countless glowing energy orbs swirling around Kyle, Adele murmured inwardly, "Third circle level multi-magic. At least 20 strikes, much easier than I thought." A slight smile curved on his lips, so easy it was almost unbelievable. On Kyle's side, he maintained intense focus, his sharp eyes locked firmly on the target. The magical orbs he had just created hovered, glowing like tiny stars. Without hesitation, he swung his hand, commanding them to dart straight towards Adele, shouting fiercely, "Die." The magical orbs screamed as they cut through the wind, aiming directly at Adele's body. But just as they were about to hit, Adele silently activated his position-swapping skill. In the blink of an eye, his body vanished, replaced by a sphere of energy appearing in the original spot. Kyle's attacking orbs lost their target and crashed into the stone wall behind, causing a blinding explosion that shook the entire space. Seeing Adele suddenly rush forward, Kyle smiled with satisfaction, a gleam of triumph in his eyes. "I've been waiting for you to use this move for a long time," he shouted loudly, but before he could savor the moment of victory, Adele used the position swap again. In an instant, his body appeared right behind Kyle, as fast as a ghost. Kyle froze, turned his head in shock, eyes wide with disbelief. How did he link them together? Before he could finish the sentence, a dense wave of dark magic burst from Adele, enveloping the entire surrounding space. The darkness was like a living curtain, swallowing the light and making the scene suffocatingly mysterious. Looking at the scene before him, Kyle stammered, his voice trembling. "This is..." Adele cut him off, his voice cold and low. "Get some sleep." Before Kyle could react, he raised his hand and delivered a powerful strike to the back of his opponent's neck. Kyle collapsed instantly, unconscious, his body limp as it fell to the cold ground. Adele exhaled deeply, murmuring softly, "Finally, I've got him." He glanced around, scanning the items Kyle had prepared earlier, unable to help but marvel. So much preparation just to kill me. His gaze settled on Kyle's unconscious body, and a thought suddenly flickered through his mind. Should I just kill him now? But he immediately dismissed that idea. No, I need the information Kyle holds. If I kill him, Ray will become my enemy. Dealing with Kyle is easy, but Ray is a different story. In Adele's mind, the image of Ray was vivid. The girl who was once helped by the protagonist had now become a powerful pseudo-contractor, freed from a fatal illness. The dragon's heart had granted her tremendous strength, enough to control an enormous amount of mana, turning her into a great mage, no less than a legendary heroine. If Rei were to unleash her full power to avenge her brother, even Adele would find it hard to retreat unscathed. Their bond truly was that strong. He thought silently, his eyes briefly clouded with contemplation. Then he noticed a small device nearby that looked like a camera. Humph, this transmitter only sends information one way, with no status updates. They probably still think Rei is suffering in pain. He turned to Kyle, his voice lowering. But that doesn't mean I'll let you go. If only there were a way to make him obey me, how great that would be. Just then, Kyle's body slightly stirred, a sign that he was gradually waking up. Adele watched, a cunning smile briefly crossing his face. I see, he thought to himself, so there is still a way. Kyle opened his eyes, waking up from unconsciousness, realizing he was unharmed. He scanned his whole body and then glared fiercely at Adele, shouting loudly, "What are you plotting?" Adele raised an eyebrow, pretending to be surprised. Plotting? I don't understand what you mean. Kyle growled angrily. I mean, why didn't you just kill me but let me wake up? Adele smiled, his tone gentle but tinged with danger. Ah, indeed I was waiting, but do you think I was just standing by doing nothing? Finishing his words, he took out a small dragon from inside his sleeve. Its entire body emitted a dense dark magical aura, making the surrounding air feel thick and heavy. Seeing the dragon, Kyle was stunned, his whole body trembling as he stammered, "What is that? What the hell is that?" Adele smiled coldly. So you recognize it now. Kyle panicked, his voice trembling. You can also control the poisonous parasite. Adele nodded in confirmation. That's right. He raised the small dragon and continued. This parasite is called the twin poison, just a slight trigger is enough to kill the host, but it only works properly when inside the bodies of two people. Kyle jumped up, eyes full of panic. Twin poison, what the hell have you done to me? Suddenly, a horrifying thought flashed through his mind. Kyle jerked back, shouting loudly. Wait, don't tell me. Adele nodded, his tone calm but cold. Just as you think, the last one is inside Rei. Hearing this, Kyle's whole body trembled with anger. Adele continued leisurely. Her body is truly fascinating, her mana sensitivity is so high that even my heart can hardly bear it, which makes the parasite implantation much easier. These words made Kyle shake violently, unable to utter a word. His body turned to stone. Adele went on, her voice gentle but full of authority. Although her condition is very dangerous, it is not incurable. Kyle seemed to snap out of it and hurriedly spoke. So. Adele interrupted him. If it were me, I could cure her. Kyle narrowed his eyes in suspicion. Someone like you can do what even the great national archmages cannot. Adele smiled, raising a finger. A stream of dark mana burst from the fingertip, awakening the little dragon. It opened its eyes, devouring that mana like a starving beast. Adele slowly explained. The Bear's clan's parasites feed on the host's mana. Rei's heart cannot withstand the overwhelming mana, but the parasite absorbs it. Knowing so much about Rei, do you think I have no way to make you submit? Watching the little dragon fall asleep after enjoying the meal, Kyle felt his whole body go limp. A thought gradually became clear in his mind. It turns out this parasite was actually saving my sister. He looked up at Adele, his voice trembling. So, what do you want from me? You can't say so much and then just leave us alone unless you clearly want something from me. Adele stepped closer, a thick aura of killing intent radiating from him. He sat down and stared directly into Kyle's eyes, his voice cold and deep. I really like your attitude, but don't forget your life and your sister's are in my hands. Under heavy pressure, Kyle gritted his teeth, his whole body trembling slightly, and finally nodded. Understood. Adele smiled with satisfaction and stood up. I want two things. Kyle frowned. Two things. Adele glanced at the communication orb beside him. First, send false information to the Royal Academy using that device. Say that Saitan is plotting an attack on the candidates of the 35th hero. Kyle was puzzled. You plan to attack another 5, right? I can't accept that. Adele reassured him. I understand your concern, and of course you worry because Rei is studying at the Royal Academy. Don't worry, if you cooperate, I will ensure Rei's safety. Hearing this, Kyle clenched his hand tightly, trembling. He nodded. All right, I will send the false message as you said. What is the second request? Adele replied immediately, leave this place. Kyle was stunned, his body turning to stone. He looked up. You want me to leave Saitan? Adele nodded. Yes, there's something I need you to do outside. Regularly gather and report all rumors about the hidden regions in the demon realm to me. Upon this condition, Kyle immediately agreed. Alright, I will give you what you want. Feeling that everything was going smoothly, Adele silently rejoiced. It was even easier than he thought. Just a little deception, and when the fake news was exposed, Kyle would be discarded. Plus, taking advantage of his spying skills was really convenient. But just then, Kyle cut through his thoughts, speaking in a low voice. I have one condition. Adele was startled and thought to himself, what, even now he dares to make a condition? He calmly asked, what's the condition? Kyle gritted his teeth, his tone resolute. Write a pact of gods and demons. If you don't agree, just kill me and my sister, I don't care. Adele was stunned, thinking to himself, a pact of gods and demons. Under the name of magic, a pact set up creates an inviolable bond. Whoever dares to break a vow sworn under the name of god or demon must pay with their life. Adele looked Kyle straight in the eyes and thought to himself, it's risky, but this is the surest way to restrain him. Seeing Adele deep in thought, Kyle frowned suspiciously. What are you planning to do? Adele smiled coldly and replied, fine, I accept. In his mind, a plan gradually formed. If I cleverly slip a small trick into the pact, breaking the vow won't be too hard. He turned to Kyle, his voice steady. Only a Grandmaster level mage can create such an item, do you have any left? Kyle shrugged and snapped, none left. Hearing that, Adele burst out laughing, his eyes flashing with mockery. Haha, aren't you a bit too confident? Kyle stared at him challengingly. For someone like you, getting that thing can't be too hard, right? Faced with Kyle's arrogant attitude, Adele slightly clenched his teeth and muttered under his breath. I knew it, in the end, I still have to do it myself, he thought silently. Of course, someone must possess it, the question is who. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. That's right, maybe Lecturer Robolt will have it. Putting the thought aside, Adele immediately spoke up. Alright, I'll try to get one today. He extended his hand, his tone resolute. Meet me here at dawn tomorrow. Kyle hesitated for a few seconds, his eyes filled with doubt, then also reached out his hand to seal the deal, after which the two went their separate ways. Adele had just taken a few steps when the corner of his mouth lifted into a slight smile. Looks like I've just found a useful dog. Meanwhile, Kyle clenched his teeth tightly, cursing silently to himself. Damn it, after walking a bit, an uneasy feeling suddenly rose within Adele. Even if he deceived them with false information about Kyle, he still wasn't sure he could do well in the midterm exam. No matter what is done at Imperial University, the chance of success is almost zero. He clenched his fists tightly, telling himself that nevertheless, he must try at all costs. The scene shifted to Lecturer Robolt's office. At this moment, Robolt was still immersed in his research, his eyes focused intently on the pile of documents before him. Suddenly, a noise from outside startled him. Adele stepped in, offering a friendly smile. Good morning, Professor. His unexpected appearance left Robolt amazed. He stood up abruptly and approached, his tone cheerful. You really came as we agreed. Adele nodded in reply. Of course, a promise must be kept. Robolt warmly invited him. Sit down, would you like some tea? Adele nodded. Yes, thank you, sir. While waiting for Robolt to brew the tea, Adele glanced around the room. The shelves were filled with documents, magical tools glittering with mana, and ancient ritual symbols on the walls. He wasn't just interested in books but rituals as well. This truly was a mage professor's laboratory, Adele thought silently in admiration. Just a few minutes later, Robolt brought out a steaming pot of tea. As he poured the tea, he spoke, "Thank you for coming." Adele replied politely, "No, I'm the one who should thank you for your warm hospitality." Then he went straight to the point, "But may I ask, why exactly do you need me?" Robolt's expression suddenly turned serious, he pushed up his glasses and lowered his voice. This is a rather significant matter. Hearing this, Adele quietly pondered. So it's not a trivial issue. Perhaps I should try probing him a little. He spoke cautiously, "Are you afraid I might reveal it to others?" Robolt immediately denied it. "No, not for that reason, it's just that this isn't something easily shared." Adele smiled and made a proposal. "Then if you wish, I can sign a demon god pact." Hearing this, Robolt was startled. He answered, his voice tinged with excitement. "Oh, if you're willing to do that, of course, I'll tell you." Adele thought to himself, so he really does have it. Robolt waved his hand to summon a contract sheet enveloped by a deep red magical aura that sparkled like blood. He brought it before him. Looking at the contract, Adele was surprised. Was it really that easy? The contract clearly stated that Robolt's research documents must not be disclosed, and that support for the research must continue until significant results were achieved. In exchange, he would receive a salary, with terms spelled out clearly. Adele turned to Robolt and asked, "Did you prepare this in advance?" Robolt scratched his head and laughed awkwardly. Haha. Adele continued, "Okay, can we adjust a clause to be fairer? If during the research process I find it beyond my capabilities, I can stop supporting and return all the salary I've received." Robolt nodded. "Reasonable. So, how do you want to be compensated?" Adele responded immediately, "I want a Demon God's Oath Pact and 3 premium mana potions." Hearing the request, Robolt stroked his chin, pondering. Adele thought to himself, premium mana potions can fully restore mana upon drinking, an essential item for him right now. After a while of thinking, Robolt amended the clause on the contract and handed it to Adele. "Understood. That's cheaper than even a vial of elixir, you just need to sign here." Adele held the contract and asked, "I just need to sign my name here, right?" Robolt nodded. "That's right." Before signing, Adele curiously asked why he chose me. "Surely there are many students better than me." Robolt replied calmly. "Actually, I've asked many second and third year students for help, but most weren't any help. Oh, I even invited Samuel from the first year, but he flatly refused, saying it was troublesome." Adele smiled quietly, typical Samuel. After signing, he handed the contract to Robolt. It was done. In his heart, he thought, "I will soon have to use an alias without the name Arson in it." Immediately, the contract vanished, transforming into a deep red magical energy that shot straight into Adele's heart. The pact was established. He felt a new power surging through his body and exclaimed. "So this is how the Demon God's Oath is sealed." Robolt stood up and took a book from the shelf, then turned around. "It's done, now let's begin right away." As he reached for the bookshelf suddenly shifted, revealing a secret tunnel. Adele murmured in surprise. "I didn't expect a place like this to exist," wondering if Principal Saitan or the other lecturers knew about it. Seeing his hesitation, Robolt turned back, urging. "Go in. This is the place." Adele followed, observing the surroundings and marveling. "A secret laboratory underground, huh?" Robolt pointed to a book on the table. "This is the book I'm currently researching." Adele looked puzzled. "This book?" Robolt nodded. "Yes, it's considered an artifact." Adele muttered. "An old book, it really looks like an ancient manuscript." He stepped forward and opened the book, but found that the inside contained no writing at all. He looked up and asked, "What is this?" Robolt nodded and continued, "That's right, as you can see, most of the pages are completely blank, but there is writing on the last page." Adele asked further, "Where did you get this book?" Robolt replied, "I happened to find it in an abandoned house in the western desert, lying among a pile of fine sand." Adele frowned. "An abandoned house in the middle of the desert, based on the large nearby oasis, I guess there was once a village there." Adele nodded, "So besides the book and the ruins, the whole village disappeared without a trace." Robolt confirmed, "That's also the only conclusion I can draw for now." Adele exclaimed, "Interesting. Let me see the writing on the last page." Robolt's face instantly brightened, and he responded immediately, "Of course. That's exactly why I invited you here." He flipped to the last page, where strange characters appeared on the page, resembling an ancient language. Looking at the cryptic writing, Adele said, "So there really is writing." Robolt continued, "Yes, but I have absolutely no way to decode it." "Do you understand what it says?" Adele stared intently at the winding characters and thought to himself, "There's no way I could recognize this strange script." Robolt interrupted his thoughts. "Now you understand why even the other top students gave up." Adele asked, "Has there been any progress in the research so far?" Robolt shook his head, "No, still no leads." Adele proposed a hypothesis, perhaps the clue lies where the book was found. Robolt replied that strangely, he had visited several nearby villages, but no one knew anything about the ruins or this book. Seeing the case at an impasse, Adele frowned slightly, thinking to himself that trying to find an answer without any clues was really difficult. What if they returned empty-handed? He reached out and touched the page, feeling to see if there was anything unusual. Suddenly, a violent surge of energy emanated from the book. Adele was startled, thinking to himself, "What is this? Why is my necklace reacting?" At the same time, the lines of text on the page began to change strangely, as if they were coming to life. Looking at the squiggly lines before him, Adele marveled inwardly. Are the letters moving? Could it be that his eyes were playing tricks on him? But no, the ancient scripts on the page truly began to move, twisting like magical snakes, rearranging themselves into characters he could read. The first line appeared clearly and coldly, "The breaker of the laws, the price paid is brutal destruction. Everything will continually perish until this world comes to an end." Adele pondered quietly, his gaze fixed on the page. He could read it, but understood nothing. He reached to touch the necklace around his neck, sensing the strange energy vibrating. The pendant's reaction surely had something to do with demons or gods. Seeing Adele deep in thought, Robolt spoke up curiously, "Is something wrong?" Adele looked up calmly and replied, "I have decoded the inscription." Robolt was startled and exclaimed, "What?" Adele explained slowly, "This sentence talks about breaking the law, but I can't clearly explain the rest yet." Robolt looked at the book, his eyes shining brightly, an excited tone. "Indeed, the syllables match perfectly. It is indeed related to the chaos attribute, a rare attribute, very worthy of study." He suddenly turned to a hurried tone, wanting to know more. "We need to conduct further research. But for now, this is an extraordinary discovery." Adele raised an eyebrow and replied lightly, "Is that so?" Robolt nodded enthusiastically, "Yes, I think we need to continue searching for artifacts and ancient texts in other lands." He paused, looked at the students. "That will be enough for now." Adele intended to ask permission to leave, but Robolt suddenly spoke up, "The payment will be transferred right now." Adele replied, "Right now?" Robolt smiled, "That's right, please wait a moment." Adele thought to himself, if it were a divine demonic contract, that would be understandable, but mana recovery potions require time to brew. Meanwhile, Robolt rummaged through things, mumbling, "Let's see, where did I put it?" Hearing this, Adele suddenly froze. A thought flashed, "Wait a minute, if Robolt continues researching other ancient texts and artifacts." He reached out and touched the necklace. The 3 gems on it were glowing a bright blood red. The influence of the ancient texts has turned these 3 treasured gems red. If the entire necklace were soaked in blood, what would happen? Even he did not know. He pondered silently. If it had nothing to do with demons or gods, it was best to keep it close. Although he was familiar with Robolt, the man was not entirely trustworthy yet. After a moment of searching, Robolt exclaimed, "Found it." He turned back and handed a mana vial to Adele, smiling warmly. Adele accepted it, still deep in thought that it would be safer to keep it on him. Robolt then took out a small bag. "Here it is, I've put all the payment into this bag so it's easier for you to carry." Adele nodded as he took the bag, thanking him sincerely. Robolt stepped forward politely, "No, I should be the one thanking you. Without you, I wouldn't have been able to read those texts. I hope to cooperate with you again in the future." Adele smiled, "I will help as much as I can." Robolt suddenly became serious and warned, Please don't tell anyone else about my research." Adele's expression soured slightly. He muttered to himself, "That depends on the exorcist's decision as well." Robolt was startled. "No, are you planning to break the contract?" Adele stepped closer, exuding a strong aura of menace. He looked Robolt straight in the eyes and said coldly, "It seems this research hasn't been approved by the headmaster, right? If all procedures were followed and Saitan had given consent, there'd be no need to sign a secrecy contract." Robolt's uneasy demeanor confirmed Adele's suspicion. Adele smiled, shifting to a gentler tone. "If this research gets discovered, I'd probably be expelled, but since we're in this together, I'll do my best to help you. All you need is some more mana recovery potions." Robolt broke out in a cold sweat, stammering, "I understood." He hurriedly grabbed a few more mana potions, his voice trembling, saying that this is all he has left now. Looking at the number of mana potions, Adele thought silently, "Not bad." He accepted the payment, turned around to leave, thanking and taking his leave. Just as he was about to step out, Robolt called after him, "And that contract, what do you plan to use it for?" Adele stopped, turned his head with a sly smile, "To save a slave." The scene shifted to the dormitory, exactly at Adele's appointed time. He stepped into the room, where Kyle was already waiting. The master looked at him coldly and said, "You're here." Adele replied calmly, "It's been a long time since we last met." Kyle frowned, "What the hell is that?" "You've brought the contract already." Adele took out a contract and held it forth. "Of course, now we might as well write the contract." Kyle took the contract and exclaimed, "I didn't expect this to be true, you actually got it today." Adele smirked, "You told me to find it, so what are you saying now? If you want to change your mind, it won't work with me. If you go back on your word, be prepared to face the consequences. Read the contents carefully before signing." Kyle glanced over the contract, which clearly stated that Kyle would not be harmed by Adele nor his sister. Ray's illness would never relapse again. Kyle would prioritize Adele's commands. However, Adele would never issue any orders that endangered Kyle's life. After reading, the contract immediately dissolved, transforming into a blazing red energy that shot straight into Kyle's heart. Seeing the familiar scene, Adele smiled warmly. The contract was now complete. He took a small piece of paper out of his shirt, continuing, "This is the first order." Kyle nodded, understanding, "We'll send false information. Insert the paper into this slot, and it will start sending." Watching Kyle's professional actions, Adele thought to himself, "Using it like that, how interesting." Right, to open a gate big enough for someone to pass through requires enormous resources and mana. Kyle continued, this automatically reloads each month and can be used once. Send messages to make them think we are dead and will no longer target us. Sooner or later, we will become worthless anyway. Adele stepped forward with a faint smile, dead. This is a mutually beneficial agreement after all. Kyle sighed with a weary tone, do as you wish. He continued, now there is one more order. From today, you will leave Saitan. Go gather all news about the demon realm from outside, whether it's secret realms, stories about the high-level demon clans, or hidden artifact histories. For now, find the nearest secret realm location and information about any clans that have escaped punishment. Send reports every half-month. Kyle nodded, understood. Seeing his professional attitude, Adele was pleased inwardly. Probably because of his experience as a spy, his ability to receive and grasp orders was very quick. Kyle suddenly reached out his hand. Adele was surprised and also extended his hand in return. Thinking to himself, Kyle actually initiated a handshake. He spoke, looking forward to your upcoming achievements. But contrary to expectations, Kyle slapped his hand away and shouted, achievements my foot. Give me money, you need money to gather intelligence. Adele forced a smile and scratched his head. Ah, right, it's the money. I forgot there isn't much, what should I do? He quickly took out a piece of paper and said, just mention my name and give this to them, the bear's family will help you, but absolutely do not open it to look. Kyle took the paper and nodded, understood. Today I will depart immediately, I will submit my withdrawal form and leave Saitan. Adele praised him, quick and agile. Kyle didn't care, walked away coldly, snorting, living with scum like them is really disgusting. The scene switched to the next day in the classroom. Adele sat pensively in the middle of the class. Since yesterday, Kyle had completely disappeared from Saitan. Rumors of him submitting a withdrawal form spread quickly, causing his name to be mentioned quite a lot due to the commotion in the dining hall. Even Luna suspected herself, which was understandable. She suddenly lost control while eating. He thought further, the issue was with Instructor Aries, who surely had noticed something but would not interfere with him. Only a few days remained until the midterm exams, and if they changed class president now, it would surely cause a lot of chaos. Idea entered, placed her hand on the desk, her voice ringing out, pleased to meet everyone. She continued, in 3 days the midterm exams will begin. There are 4 subjects, weapon skills, magic, understanding humanity, and practical exercises. Among them, the most important subject is practical exercises. The practical exam on the last day will involve an attack on the Human Royal Academy. Idea's words stirred the whole class, everyone was surprised, only Adele remained calm, thinking silently, at last, it has begun. He thought to himself, finally arriving at this place. Now, the main plot of the original story will officially begin. The demons attack the Royal Academy, while the humans put all their effort into stopping them. Amidst this chaos, countless villains will reveal themselves and fierce clashes will erupt. Contrary to everyone's worries, the girl prone stood up, hands on her hips, happily declaring that the top spot in the midterm exam would be hers. In response to her arrogant declaration, a student below nodded in agreement and cheered, saying that anything was possible if it was her. Another shouted loudly with an excited tone, kill the class president, eliminate them all. She laughed loudly and continued, haha, kneel before me. Hearing this, Adele clenched his teeth slightly, thinking to himself, is it really necessary to kill? It seems the whole class has been brainwashed. The 2 students below began to whisper and discuss. One spoke with worry, asking if the invasion of humanity was truly about to happen. The other replied with a grating voice, saying, given all we have endured, we must avenge this grievance. Confused thoughts surged through Adele's mind. The demons who lost their loved ones were fiercely seeking revenge against humans, this might be better than trembling in fear like this. He furrowed his brow and continued thinking, if everything unfolds as in the novel, Class A will be wiped out during the midterm exam, but there is still hope. I have changed countless original plot details up to now. I bribed Kyle to leak false information to the Royal Academy and kept Luna from being expelled. Destroying the Royal Academy is impossible, but at least I can save the entire class, preventing their complete demise. If I manage that, I will receive the highest praise as a truly exemplary class president. And Ares' trust will be the accompanying reward, opening more opportunities to access Saitan's armory again. A smile spread across his lips, the goal for this exam was to survive and achieve a high score. He resolutely decided, in a determined tone, to go all in as if betting his very life. Back at the dormitory, Renee stood before him, speaking coldly. It had been a long time since they last met. In response to this somewhat brusque remark, Adele slightly furrowed his brows and replied, yes, miss, it feels like months have passed, as if it has been many months since we last met. He thought to himself that she was very angry. Her face darkened, radiating intense hostility. She continued, in a sharp tone, perhaps because you've been avoiding me. Under this heavy pressure, Adele slightly stooped. He thought to himself that they had been using the excuse of training together to evade each other, and now, suddenly being summoned before the midterm exam, he understood why she was so angry. But despite that, he glanced sideways. At this moment, Diana was sitting with her legs crossed, looking straight at him. He thought to himself, why do you two always go everywhere together? Surprised by Adele's astonished look, Diana smiled and spoke up, hello, I'm Diana. Adele didn't reply immediately, still lost in his thoughts. They say the more you try to avoid bad karmic ties, the tighter they cling. I really don't know what to do. Noticing he was silent and thoughtful, Diana tilted her head teasingly, no greeting back. Then I'd be very sad. He snapped out of his thoughts, hurriedly put his hand over his chest, bowed in greeting, I'm Adele, honored to meet someone of noble lineage like you, miss. She smiled in response, yes, nice to meet you. Renee immediately cut into the conversation, her tone cold, skip the greetings, explain to me why you have been avoiding me all this time and now suddenly demand a fight. Adele stepped closer, speaking softly, because I feel guilty. She questioned suspiciously, guilty of what? He wiped his tears lightly, sobbing, I am your defender, and I failed to protect you, that has tormented me all this time. Facing Adele's genuine expression, Renee embarrassed and angry shouted, can you stop crying like a little puppy? He continued, his voice trembling, you don't understand how I feel. Renee was cold, her whole body slightly trembling with anger. Adele thought to himself, damn it, do I really need to use this method? Then he took out a mana vial and said, actually, to make amends, I brought you a gift, my lady. Seeing the vial in Adele's hand, Diana came over to peek curiously and asked, what is this, a mana vial? Adele nodded in response, yes, I had to work very hard to get it. Diana smiled and turned to say, I heard that after the war, they became much rarer. Renee, you should take it and forgive him. Seeing her speak up for him, Adele thought silently, repaying anger with kindness, thank you, Diana. But Renee immediately brushed Diana's hand away and responded indifferently, no thanks, I don't need these things. This time Adele thought to himself, she really is angry with me. He began his charm offensive, opening up. Actually, I was bullied by other trainees because I am a half-demon, so I've been trying to keep my distance to avoid causing you trouble, Lady Renee. He immediately knelt down on one knee, his voice sincere, if that hurt you, I sincerely apologize, sorry, my lady. He thought to himself, I've said everything I could, hope this will work. Diana stood beside him, arms crossed, adding, he really cares about you, he's a very good protector. Hearing these words, Renee pondered for a moment, then the corners of her lips softly curved into a gentle smile. She stepped forward and spoke, I won't accept it. Seeing that she was less angry, Adele put his hand into his shirt and smiled as he continued, you mean you accept the mana basin now? She still kept an indifferent attitude, turning her face away and continued, I said I'm not hurt at all. Those words left Adele speechless, not knowing how to respond. Diana stepped up to rescue him once again, cheerfully saying, that's great, it seems everything is fine now. Renee glanced sideways and coldly replied, don't talk to me. Diana pointed at her eyes and laughed loudly, I'm telling you, Renee is just a bit too rigid, if she could fix that, it would be absolutely wonderful. Seeing Diana's warm attitude, Adele thought to himself, I didn't expect Diana to have this side as well. Then the group proceeded to the training room. Renee held a sword in her hand and said, then let's have a sparring match, it's been a while after all. Adele nodded and replied, all right. Diana stepped closer and whispered into Renee's ear, Renee, show him your new technique. But these words accidentally reached Adele's ears. He thought to himself, a new technique, so she must have learned something while we were apart. At that moment, a dense dark aura radiated from her. Her eyes narrowed, her voice full of killing intent. Watch carefully. She tightened her grip on the sword, mana bursting forth outward. It increased steadily, and her eyes suddenly gleamed brightly. The space around her mysteriously solidified. Facing this intense killing aura, Adele slightly furrowed his brows, thinking to himself that such a fierce killing intent was truly astonishing. The sword in Renee's hand suddenly turned jet black, emitting a dense aura of dark energy. Adele was terrified, thinking that the demonic power gathering in each sword was turning it black. Could it be a dark sword? A form of sword aura that only master knights of humanity could achieve. Usually, channeling magical power into a weapon or body can activate skills. But with a dark sword, the magic must be refined as thin as a sheet of paper. Yet he could do it, truly the descendant of the seven-shaped great sin. She gripped the sword tightly for a long moment, then relaxed her hands, causing the dark aura to gradually dissipate and returning the sword to its normal state. Seeing this, Adele stepped forward and spoke, wondering if it was not yet perfected. Renee nodded in reply, yes, I still have to concentrate with all my focus to the utmost limit. Adele tightened his short sword in hand and smiled, then let's have a match and see how it goes. The girl happily nodded, alright then. He thought to himself, curious about the power of the dark sword, but for now he'd try using a regular knife first. With that thought, he rushed toward Renee, swinging his knife with great force. She immediately swung her sword to block the attack, their weapons clashing and sparking fiery bursts all around. Facing this powerful attack, Renee took a slight step back, her eyes flashing as she spun her sword to deliver a horizontal slash. Fortunately, Adele leaned back, dodging the slash. He stepped back, dropping to one knee, readying himself for the next strike. Thinking to himself, with enhanced vision, I can see all of Renee's movements, this is doable. On the other side, Renee wielded the dark sword once again, her eyes flashed, the blade turning pitch black and exuding a terrifying pressure. The dagger in Adele's hand suddenly shattered. He was startled, thinking silently, did she deploy the dark sword that quickly? The outcome was almost decided. Adele shyly scratched his head and said, amazing, a dark sword with such power. Renee replied confidently, of course. Diana stepped forward to add, a noble lady stronger than even her own guards, that's not something you see every day. Renee is truly remarkable, isn't she? Faced with such praise, Renee quietly reflected without responding. Diana teased, what's this, are you blushing? That's not very Renee-like. Renee's expression suddenly changed. Diana's eyes flashed with a terrifying murderous intent as she spoke, but the more I look, the stranger it seems. Something seemingly ordinary yet far from trivial. She glanced over Adele's body, causing him to flinch slightly, then looked at him with a meaningful smile. What is this? I feel genuinely curious. Under the dreadful pressure she radiated, Adele shivered and broke out in a sweat as if bathed. The cold gaze of Diana as she approached him made his whole body tremble slightly. Looking into those sharp eyes, he thought silently, one of the powers Diana possessed was the ability of keen observation, capable of noticing even the tiniest fine hairs on the opponent's body. To be noticed so intently by someone destined to become a demon lord was truly overwhelming. How should I react now? Countless thoughts flooded Adele's mind, leaving him confused and unsure of what to do. He continued thinking, could she possibly become the greatest enemy? It would be best to keep some distance. Suddenly, a deep red murderous aura burst through his entire body, causing Diana to flinch briefly, a subtle, enigmatic smile curling on her lips. Looking at that confident smile, Adele thought to himself, most people would feel fear or alertness when sensing such a murderous aura, but this was a calmness only the strong possess. Renee stepped forward, cutting through the tense atmosphere, and said, Diana, are you curious about something? To this question, Diana approached, pointed at Renee, and smiled, yes, because the swordsmanship Renee just displayed looks stranger the more I watch, so I'm just a bit curious. Renee looked at her with suspicion, but seemingly with some trust as well. Seeing this, Adele muttered inwardly, she's so easily deceived. Then he turned to Renee and said, I also want to ask, how is such swordsmanship performed? Holding the sword in her hand, Renee began to explain firmly, first, you must grasp the secret, which feels like pouring energy fully into the sword itself. Adele nodded repeatedly, ah, so that's how it is, he thought to himself. Haha, only geniuses would come up with something like that. He stepped forward and continued, I still have to study for exams, so let's stop the contest here. Renee nodded in agreement, yeah, let's do that. Watching her back as she turned away, Adele asked, Renee, how is your preparation for the midterm exam going? She looked at him and smiled confidently. Perfect. Faced with that confident look, Adele also smiled, thinking that the timing of the first midterm exam and the moment the main characters received that arrogant glance didn't align. Which means Renee will survive this exam, but the chances are very high that my Class A students will all perish. Watching their backs as they walked away, he said, then good luck, miss. Renee turned back and waved, yeah, you be careful too. Diana glanced at Adele beside her and gave a slight smile, whispering, see you later. This unexpected remark startled Adele. He thought to himself, looks like I'm being noticed again. Scene changes to the next day, the academy appears under the clear blue sky. Sun rays streamed through the window panes, and a little bird perched on the windowsill, pecking at tiny crumbs of bread. Adele looked at the bird and thought, finally the midterm exams start today. Aries worked me so hard he didn't even let me eat. I still have to take exams, so hurry up and eat quickly. He was almost exhausted, his face pale, muttering to himself. The first subject is human knowledge, and despite studying all night, not a single word seemed to stick. Being the author but not understanding this subject, it's truly ridiculous. But he comforted himself, back in school, he often studied selectively, so he probably managed to salvage a few points. When he sat down in class, Adele's expression turned blank. He cursed, realizing that as soon as he entered the classroom, he forgot everything he had studied. Luna approached him, clenched her fists tightly, and encouraged him, Adele, you've done your best. His face looked like he hadn't finished speaking, but Adele interrupted, it's not that bad. He then asked Luna if she was ready. She smiled and said, yeah, I'm a bit fuzzy, but it's probably not enough to fail. He turned to Prone and asked, "What about you?" Prone crossed his arms with a confident smile, saying, "Why bother with theoretical subjects? As long as I do well in the practical parts, that's enough." Hearing that, Adele thought to himself that to increase the chance of survival, even by just 1%, no part should be taken lightly. Prone laughed loudly, "Ho ho ho, after all, the top rank will belong to this young lady here." At that moment, a teacher entered, speaking in a clear, strong voice, "Everyone, take your seats, arrange your notebooks, and put everything into your desk compartments. If anyone is caught cheating, they will be immediately expelled from the exam room." As the proctor finished speaking, the students below bowed their heads and began their exams. While working on the test, Adele muttered to himself that perhaps thanks to his interest and focus, cramming had surprisingly been effective, and the test was going smoothly. But then, a question caught his eye, causing him to pause briefly. "What do you think about humanity?" "This question isn't graded," he mumbled, "but this isn't a multiple-choice question, it's an essay, and moreover, it has no points. What does it mean to ask what I think about humanity?" If it were Adele, whose clan was destroyed by humans, the answer would be obvious. But since I created both humans and nobles, I am their father, how am I supposed to write the correct answer? Though feeling somewhat uneasy, he still knew the answer that Saitan wanted. After much thought, he wrote 2 words on the paper, enemy. 45 minutes passed, the proctor announced, "Time's up, hand in your papers." The second period will be the weapon skills test. The scene switched to the training ground. Ares crossed his arms, his expression dark and very serious. He looked toward the students, his voice low, "Today you will compete in one-on-one battles, showing your true strength. Magic or weapons, whatever it is, give it your all in the fight. You must not avoid combat out of fear. I will call names in order, step forward one by one." Faced with Ares' serious attitude, Adele sighed, thinking, the fighting spirit is intense, meaning to fight with all one's might, as if for real. Hearing these words, the 8 students below trembled with fear, especially Prone. Suddenly, a student was blasted flying backward, rolling several times on the ground, letting out a painful cry. Adele looked toward him and said, pitifully, "Is this all you've got?" Witnessing the recent scene, he thought to himself that there was no mercy at all. No one could withstand even a few seconds without being knocked down. Even now, Ares was fighting with bare hands and they still couldn't get close to him. Ares looked down and called the next person, "Samuel, come here." Hearing his name, Samuel calmly stepped forward. As soon as he stepped up, Ares said, "Fight with all your might." Samuel nodded and replied, "Yes, sir." After finishing, his whole body erupted with a surge of green mana. From within, countless bizarre-shaped monsters screamed, mixed with Samuel's cries. Immediately after, he launched numerous magical attacks straight at Ares. Facing these attacks, Ares tightened his grip on the lightning sword, mouth curling into a cold sneer, "This time I'll have to use some strength. I will respond seriously." A blazing red mana radiated from Ares' body, enveloping the sword and making it glow red. Seeing this, Adele shouted loudly in his mind, "The sword technique is different from Prone's, the red hue must be the fire element." In the center of the battle, Ares swung a few times, instantly cutting through Samuel's attacks. Seeing his attacks easily countered, Samuel clenched his teeth and cursed, "Damn it." He muttered, "So strong, truly the Templar Ares." Even using that technique, he remained steady and unshaken. But then he clenched his fists tightly, faced the sky, shouted loudly, and his entire body burst forth with countless streams of dark mana surrounding him. Seeing that, Ares clenched his teeth, his facial muscles tensed, and spoke up, restoring his previous state was fine too. But with just a single charge, the bizarre monsters created by Samuel were immediately cut into pieces by Ares. He lunged forward, pointing the blade in front of Samuel, causing him to flinch briefly. Before Samuel could react, Ares tightened his other fist and threw a straight punch into his chest. Samuel let out a painful cry. Kneeling down on both knees, clutching his stomach, his whole body trembling, he struggled to speak, clearing his throat. Ares coldly asked, "Are you still willing to continue?" Samuel's trembling hand slightly lifted to resist, gritting his teeth against the intense pain. From behind, a demon created from mana opened its mouth wide and charged straight at Ares. Just as Ares realized, it bit hard into his shoulder, causing a few droplets of blood to spatter. But this strike seemed to have no effect on him. He reached out and gave a slight pull, instantly tearing the monster in two, his expression turning cold. "My shoulder has been getting hurt a lot lately, huh?" An unexpected counterattack, a wise decision. At this moment, Samuel was breathing heavily and after a few seconds fell face down onto the ground. Seeing this, Ares turned back and spoke out, "Quickly take Samuel out of the exam room." He looked toward the group of students, his voice stern, "Next one, come here. His gaze was extremely fierce as he looked directly at Adele and called out, "Come up here, Adele." As soon as Adele stepped forward, the dark red murderous aura surged out from Ares, making the whole space feel suffocating, and everyone was terrified. He looked directly at him, his voice deep and low, and began. Looking at him, Adele muttered inwardly, the murderous aura was truly terrifying. Even if he didn't kill him, the master intended to take at least an arm or a leg from him. Ares raised his sword forward and declared clearly, "Give it your all." Adele immediately responded, "Please wait a moment." Ares frowned, suspicious, "What else do you want to prepare?" Adele smiled confidently and said, "I have something I want to see." Ares furrowed his brows, daring to make such a request to a test examiner. "You want me to show you what?" Adele made his proposal with determination. "I want to see you envelop the blade with sword aura." From the start, Ares explained coldly, "Sword aura isn't something you can imitate just by looking, you have to truly grasp it." Adele raised his hand and asserted, "If you show me once, I believe I can feel it." Faced with this arrogant remark, Ares tightened his grip on the sword with both hands, his voice deepening, "You've got some nerve. Fine, I'll show you once, watch closely." As soon as he finished speaking, a large amount of mana surged from the sword, gathering on the blade and radiating a brilliant red light. Watching this scene, Adele thought to himself, in just an instant, the red mana condensed and enveloped the blade, truly astonishing. Seeing Adele deep in thought, Ares asked in puzzlement, "Do you think you can do this?" Adele clenched his fist, eyes full of determination, "Thank you for showing me." He smiled confidently, thinking to himself that this wasn't something you could learn by using just your brain. At that moment, a large amount of purple mana surged from Adele's body and converged into the blade in his hand. Seeing this, Ares's expression darkened slightly. He clenched his teeth and coldly said, "I admit you have talent, but that sword energy wave can only last for 5 seconds before dissipating." Adele was briefly startled and thought to himself, "It's still a bit too much for me, it only lasts 5 seconds, but even so, it's worth trying." Immediately, he enveloped the blade again with sword energy, looked toward Ares with a smile, and said, "Let's begin." Under his determined gaze, Ares replied happily, "All right then, come at me." Below the arena floor, Samuel was being treated for his wounds by Luna. He looked up at Adele in the arena, thinking to himself, if he moves like that. Cutting back to the arena, the fierce clashes of sword energy caused the space to tremble, with energy radiating everywhere and creating a chaotic scene. Adele retreated backward, took a stance, then charged straight at Ares, attacking relentlessly. Suddenly, a confident smile appeared on his lips. He thrust a sword straight towards Ares, but Ares easily raised his sword to block. The two swords clashed, sparks flying everywhere. Ares smiled and said, "You cloak your sword with energy when you swing it, it feels like watching a performance." Adele smiled lightly, thanking him for the compliment. But immediately after, Ares swung his sword powerfully, knocking Adele back several steps. While he was still suspended in the air, Adele immediately used the position-swapping skill. This time, the target was Ares's sword. In an instant, he appeared right in front of him. The blade, enveloped by sword aura, aimed straight at Ares's face. A powerful stab rushed forward, but with quick reflexes, Ares leaned backward, dodging the attack. Then he swung his leg to kick hard, sending Adele flying several meters backward. Adele thought to himself, the master just dropped his sword. Right then, he immediately unleashed the triple dark Fong blade technique. 3 mana blades appeared around him, exuding a dense killing intent. At his command, the 3 blades shot straight toward Ares, but Ares remained unscathed. He gritted his teeth, thinking it was just a minor irritation. He tensed, creating a protective circle that blocked all 3 of Adele's attacks. Faced with such quick reflexes, Adele thought to himself, that massive body had unbelievably fast reflexes, plus a body shield, even his dark blades couldn't hit him. That master really was a monster. Just as the thought ended, Ares clenched his fist tightly, raising his other hand, aiming to grab Adele's head to attack. When the fist was close to his face, Adele yelled loudly, "I surrender." The unexpected word startled Ares. He wondered, what did he say? He angrily shouted, "I already told you, you are not allowed to run away." Adele calmly explained that both his arms used to block the attacks were injured and that he had completely run out of mana, unable to continue fighting. He gently brushed aside Ares' fist, thinking silently that getting injured before the combat test would only be a disadvantage. There was no need for him to act that way. Also, he surrendered just to annoy that teacher. Ares angrily put his hands on his hips, turned around and shouted, "All right, go back to your seat." Adele smiled and thanked the teacher for understanding. He turned back angrily and shouted, "Stop talking nonsense." Next person, faced with Ares' furious attitude, Adele smiled inwardly, scared stiff and too afraid to speak. Following behind him as he stepped down, the students below buzzed with whispers, the class monitor collaborating with the examiner. After this, it would be impossible. Another added, even if half demonic, the class monitor is still the class monitor. These rumors were exactly as Adele had predicted. He smiled inwardly, everything unfolded just as he planned. He had attracted attention with flashy moves while Ares seemed unable to do anything. During the combat test, I have to be clearly the center of the entire class. If Prone led as in the original story, Class A would have been wiped out. After witnessing the recent fight, Samuel approached, clenched his fist tightly, and wondered, why did it end up like that? Adele turned back and replied, you recovered really fast, but what the heck are you talking about? Samuel shouted, I'm asking why. Adele adjusted his shirt and calmly explained, well, I ran out of mana and energy, so I had no choice but to surrender. Samuel interrupted angrily, that's not what I'm asking. The question is why are you so strong? His arm clenched into a fist, trembling slightly with anger. Adele looked at him with a smile, oh, maybe it's just innate. Samuel angrily asked back, is that all? Adele replied, do I need any other reason? Samuel sneered mockingly, hard to believe that someone like you could be so strong. Adele responded calmly, aren't you also born into a well-off family and possess that greedy power? At this slightly provocative remark, Samuel's expression darkened. He coldly said, you little trash, watch your mouth, one day I'll break your teeth. As words left his mouth, a dense murderous aura radiated from him. Seeing Samuel's darkened gaze, Adele was puzzled, but he remained silent. After a moment of staring at each other, Samuel angrily turned and left, snorting coldly, what trash. Watching his retreating back, Adele thought to himself, suddenly appearing out of nowhere to pick a fight, I worry he won't obey orders during the midterm exam. Prone stepped forward, cutting off his thoughts, and said, so what's going on? Why are you acting like this? Adele turned and replied, Samuel was the one who started it. She continued seriously, the issue isn't about that. It's true that Samuel treats you badly, but I don't understand why you keep provoking his family. Just because I mentioned his family and made a fuss? Compared to how he looks down on me for being a half-demon. Hearing that, Prone gently closed his eyes and sighed, turns out he really didn't know. She explained that Samuel is the head of the gluttonous clan. Watching Samuel's figure walk away, he murmured to himself, a first-year student who has just enrolled is already a clan head? As if understanding his thoughts, Prone spoke up to explain, just as you think, his clan was completely annihilated. Hearing this, Adele quietly murmured in his heart, so that's why, no wonder he reacts like that every time his clan is mentioned. She continued, during the Great War between humans and demons, all the bloodlines were wiped out by humanity, only Samuel survived, becoming the clan head. Now you understand why I blame you. At that moment, Adele thought silently, originally, I was also in the same situation of clan annihilation, but since I merged with him, I didn't truly feel the rage or sorrow. Samuel is different, he witnessed and experienced that tragic scene firsthand. He once thought that things like clan or family exterminations were just plot setups, but never expected the characters in his novel to become this vivid. Then he turned to her with a smile and said, from now on, I'll be more cautious. She nodded in response, do that, I'm off now. Watching her back as she walked away, he said, good luck on your exam. She laughed loudly, haha, even a servant worries about me. She looked back confidently and said, this is as easy as eating porridge, just sit there and watch with your own eyes. Looking at her back, Adele smiled, thinking to himself that he thought it was all just bragging, but it turns out there's a serious side too. But then, distant noises suddenly made him flinch. Prone, come here quickly. Then from over there, loud cries rang out, wake up for me. Prone, please spare me. Faced with this scene, he frowned slightly, thinking that he should start preparing for the next test. The third test was stealth techniques and magic theory, which were his strong suits, so there was nothing to worry about. The magic theory part mostly covered familiar knowledge, so it wasn't difficult. As soon as the test was finished, the proctor announced, all right, everyone has worked hard. Please take a good rest before the practical exam begins. As soon as the words ended, he laid his head on the desk and sighed softly. Phew. Among all the tests, this was the easiest one, maybe his magic score would be almost perfect. But the problem was the practical exam afterward. No matter how well he did in previous subjects, dying during practice would render everything meaningless. Could he do it? Just thinking about the practical made him feel nauseous. Then from a distance, a figure approached his desk, causing him to flinch. It was Prone. She crossed her arms and asked, did you do okay on the magic test? He replied, it was okay. How about you? She laughed loudly and asked back, haha, guess. Seeing her confident attitude, he thought to himself, it seems this girl's specialty is magic, so she must have done well on the exam. If he didn't indulge her a little, he'd probably be bothered all day long. He spoke up, she must have gotten a perfect score. Ending his thought, he continued, clearly, she just bombed the weapon proficiency test, yet for some reason, she still likes to brag. Hearing this, her expression suddenly changed, her face stiffening. She stepped forward, grabbed him by the collar, and shouted, what did you say, you bastard? Seeing her anger, he immediately explained, hey, I just misspoke. I was just worried about the practical exam and said something careless. She lightly punched him in the face and yelled, go to hell. Then, from outside, an orange-haired young man walked in and said, hello, Class A. Recognizing him as somewhat familiar, he thought quietly, is that Baltan? Just as he expected, Baltan approached him and asked, oh, you're well, huh? He replied warmly, long time no see, Baltan. He wondered silently, why did this guy suddenly come here? In response to his polite attitude, Baltan smiled shyly and said, haha, you remember me? I'm really touched then. But then his demeanor suddenly shifted, his eyes filled with menace as he said coldly, looks like you've gotten much stronger. Faced with this somewhat threatening remark, Adele refused to show weakness. Purple magical auras radiated from him as he smiled and replied, thank you for the compliment. Feeling that Adele's attitude was a bit firm, Baltan sighed softly and spoke, actually I wanted to have a match once, but today I have other matters. This statement made him slightly startled. Then Prone turned to ask Baltan, you're the descendant of jealousy, right? I remember you from the entrance exam, haven't met you since that day, huh? Looking at the girl, Baltan replied, and you are Prone, right? Hearing this, she smiled with amusement and responded, that's correct. Then he pointed toward the door and said, I have something to do, can you come with me? The girl angrily spoke up, how dare you order this young lady around? He replied, haha, this time it's a meeting of the class presidents, the principal will also attend, so you have to be present. At this, Adele thought to himself, a meeting? Prone interrupted, but I am not the class president. Hearing this, Baltan asked again, you're not the class president? She smiled, yes, though the class president is indeed my subordinate, but this guy here is the real class president. Saying this, she looked toward Adele, who was still sitting quietly there. This statement made Baltan momentarily startled. He glanced at him, puzzled, what? Then he changed his attitude completely, speaking with excitement, you're the class president. I really want to have a match right now, are you free? Faced with this eager attitude, Adele thought to himself, he's truly crazy. Then he replied, I have to attend the class president meeting, let's leave it for later, please lead the way ahead. Faced with this blunt refusal, Baltan was slightly angry, turned around and said, then let's go. And Prone, you should come along too. She curled her lips and replied, I am the class president's master, of course I have to follow him. Baltan walked ahead, hearing this conversation he laughed loudly, you all seem to have a lot of fun playing together, alright then, let's go now. Prone's face was cheerful, excited as if reaping a good harvest, quickly speaking up, follow me, and you stay in the back. Slightly frowning, Adele cursed silently inside, oh god, what on earth is going on here? Scene shifts to the hallway. Adele stepped up and asked, by the way, why did you call the class president's meeting? Baltan answered while walking, oh, it's to divide areas for the midterm exam, this time it's invading the human world, you all know that, right? He in the back replied, so that's it, meaning the meeting is to determine which areas each class will attack. Hearing this, Baltan turned back and praised, very sharp indeed, no wonder you were chosen as class president. Even if you are a half-demon class president, it's still better than those big-headed dull types like some grape-shaped brains. As he finished speaking, he pushed open the door and the three of them entered the room. At that moment, Renee, Diana, and the other class presidents were present in the room. Seeing his appearance, Renee wondered inwardly, why is he here? Beside them were the class president of Class D, Gu War, and the class president of Class B, Aaron. Baltan was the class president of Class E. He looked toward the person sitting directly opposite and said, everyone is here now, principal. Seeing the three people enter, the principal said, please come in quickly, class president of Class A, Adele. These words made Renee startle briefly, surprised to learn that Adele was the class president. Meanwhile, Aaron put on a look of frustration, asking again, what, that guy is the class president? Gu War next to him snorted coldly without responding. He stepped forward, smiling brightly and said, yes, thank you for calling me. Diana was equally surprised and turned to tease Renee, what's with your defender being so fierce? These words made Renee's expression turn shy and she didn't reply. Seeing that attitude, Adele thought to himself, so I never told Renee that I was the class president, explaining it later will probably be difficult. Seeing everyone was gathered, the principal spoke up, if everyone is here, then let's begin now, please take your seats. However, Gu War stepped forward, looked at Adele, and mocked, how ridiculous, a half-demon as class president. Then he glanced at Prone behind him and continued, and that fool back there who bore the notorious title of the 7 deadly sins has now been ousted from the class president seat. Sitting and studying with these scummy people, even Cerberus passing by couldn't hold back laughter, isn't that right? Aaron, still with his head down on the table, added, haha, not wrong at all. At these words, Prone trembled slightly with anger but remained silent. Adele maintained a calm demeanor, but thoughts began surfacing in his mind. What is this? What kind of atmosphere is this? This isn't a meeting, it's a trap. Gu War looked up and threatened, you'd better get out of my sight immediately, you damned hybrid bastard. In response to this threat, Adele did not falter at all, his eyes narrowed slightly, flashing a heavy killing intent, silently scoffing inside, surrounded by enemies on all sides. At this moment, Adele was being overwhelmed by Gu War's massive body. He thought to himself, just following Baltan to the meeting room, and yet such a thing happens. Even the principal tacitly allowed this situation to occur. Could it be that they deliberately arranged this to test if he was qualified or not? If so, I must show some real strength. Seeing Adele just standing there without saying a word, Gu War angrily shouted, are your ears deaf? Then he stepped forward, grabbed his head with his hand, and continued, talking won't do any good. But immediately, Adele used his hand to push his arm away, his hand wrapped tightly, gripping the blade firmly, aiming straight for Gu War's throat in an incredibly fast instant. As the blade approached, Gu War instantly used his enhanced physical strength to toss aside his strike. But at that moment, countless blades created by dark magic appeared in the air, ready to plunge down. Seeing this, Gu War's whole body flared up with anger, veins bulging across his face. He shouted loudly, you damned half-demon. Then he unleashed a series of punches to block the blades rushing straight at him. As soon as he finished defending, Adele gave him no chance, immediately rushing in close. In an instant, Gu War shouted loudly, I will smash your head. His hands clenched tightly, radiating tremendous physical strength, striking straight towards Adele. He was no less formidable, his hands gripped the blade firmly, his whole body emitting a dark aura that enveloped the space. With just one slash, he easily left a cut on Gu War's arm, much to Gu War's stunned surprise. Realizing the wound, Gu War clutched his arm tightly and let out a heartrending cry of pain. Watching their duel, Renee thought to herself, sword aura, Returning to the battle, Adele stepped closer, grabbed Gu War's angry face, held it firmly and directed the blade straight towards the top of his head, causing him to tremble in fear. Just as the blade was mere millimeters from Gu War's eye, the principal behind them interrupted, saying, that's enough. Stop now and all return to your seats. These words were like a lifeline to Gu War, who was trembling violently from what had just happened. Adele immediately changed his attitude completely, sheathed his blade and smiled, saying, are you satisfied now? Gu War then collapsed to the ground, speechless. The principal looked at him, smiling, and said, that's enough. Then she ordered Adele to sit next to Aaron. He nodded in agreement, yes. Gu War looked at his wounded arm and cursed silently, damn it. Watching the play from outside, Baltan spoke up, oh, turns out he's stronger than I thought. Prone, standing beside him, smiled excitedly, haha, truly my slave. Renee was still lost in thought, yet another skill he didn't know about. Diana coldly turned and said, impressive, just as expected from Renee's bodyguard. Once everyone had settled into their seats, the principal spoke up, all right, now that everything is settled, let's begin the meeting. The sole reason I summoned you all here is to assign the attack zones to each class leader for the practical combat exam in the human world. Adele replied, I've heard a brief overview, but I want to know exactly how the areas are divided. Immediately, the principal summoned a cubic orb in his hands, looked toward him, and said, it's better to see it directly than just hear about it. From the orb, a vast map appeared floating in midair. Looking at it, Renee wondered, is this a star map? The principal replied, correct, but everyone knows this isn't an ordinary map, right? Adele spoke up, this is a continent map of the human world. The principal laughed, aha, yes. Actually, I hoped Class A would attack here, but it seems I underestimated the class leader. Looking at the marked location, Adele murmured in his heart, that's the Royal Academy, isn't it? The principal continued, so I've decided to assign you an even tougher mission. These words made the corner of Adele's mouth twitch slightly. He thought to himself, attacking the Royal Academy was already the most dangerous mission in the human world, so how could they have assigned an even harder task? What was there that he didn't know yet? The principal continued. According to information from one of our spies, one of the first-year classes in the human world will conduct an outdoor lesson to launch an attack on a secret realm. Realizing the principal's intention, Adele muttered in his heart, so that's it, they only have to attack a first-year class far from the school, so they think it's easier to carry out. Although the first years are the weakest, the problem is, the principal continued, wouldn't it be better to have Class A attack the urban area instead of the Royal Academy? At this suggestion, Prone suddenly stood up, clenched his fists, and exclaimed excitedly, that's right, what's worth fighting for among those worthless kids? Our Class A should be the ones attacking the capital. These words left Adele speechless, but thoughts continued to arise in his mind. The spies still hadn't grasped the timing, yet the protagonists' group had already surpassed even the descendants of the seven-shaped Great Sin. Their true nature would be exposed in the interclub tournament after the Royal Academy's midterm exams concluded. And in the class we have to attack, there is a member from the protagonists' group. His hands clenched tightly. If a battle broke out, except for Baltan's and Diana's classes, all the others would be annihilated. Which area would yield the best result? The area that our class must go to is. Prone continued speaking, saying our class A will, but just as he said this, Adele immediately interrupted, saying we will attack one of the first-year classes of the Royal Academy. As soon as these words were spoken, Prone looked at him angrily, shouting loudly, "What nonsense are you talking about? We should head to the capital." In response, Gu War glanced over and snorted coldly, "Truly a bunch of weak half-demons. Just a few people and they're already so afraid they choose to retreat." At this taunt, Adele turned, his eyes cold as he replied, "You should have had one of your eyes gouged out earlier. Probably now you wouldn't even dare to look at me." At this threat, Gu War suddenly stood up and shouted, "You bastard." Seeing the situation starting to descend into chaos, the headmaster spoke up to stop it. Then she looked towards Adele and asked, "Why did you choose such an easy area? I thought you would say you wanted to attack the capital." He was still deep in thought at this moment. Maybe they didn't know, but that was the class of one of the main characters, and they were the most dangerous rivals. Still, he had to accept the risk and go there because there was a spirit medicine. Usually one of the main character's companions would drink it, but I have to seize it at all costs. Having just finished thinking, he spoke up, "The reason is because of my special ability." These words made the headmaster flinch briefly. "A special ability, huh?" He nodded and replied, "Yes. First of all, I am extremely skilled in assassination, but there's no reason to cause a commotion in a city full of people. In the capital, most areas are very crowded, so bringing along dozens of people to carry out an assassination is clearly very dangerous. Of course, killing all the witnesses would also solve that problem." In response to this bold idea, the principal smiled and said, "So that's it, even more than I expected, you understand both the geography of the human world and your own strength very well. In that case, there's no reason to stop you. Class A will be assigned to attack the first-year class of the Royal Academy." Hearing this decision, Adele spoke up, thanking the principal. Then he immediately stood up and said, "Then I'd like to go inform the fellow students." He thought to himself that it would be better to leave before the principal changed his mind. Then he turned to Prone and said, "Let's go." She was very surprised by this decision, but also slightly startled as she replied, Yes." After the two of them left, the room suddenly became unusually silent. Ison crossed his arms and sarcastically said, "Impressive, huh? He's the defender from the bear's family, right? Didn't expect you to pick someone like him." This remark was directed straight at Renee, making her too embarrassed to respond. She was still lost in thought. What Adele used just now was definitely sword chi, but until recently, he hadn't even demonstrated sword chi, so how on earth did he do it? Her eyes darkened, growing heavy with emotion. Adele had always been good at hiding things. What exactly is going on? Why does this pain feel so sharp? Baltan leaned back in his chair, sighed softly. When competing in martial arts, he had only been slightly stronger, but now he has grown up so quickly, which only made me want to fight him even more, aha. The principal stepped over to the window, his gaze distant, thinking to himself that now he understood why Instructor Aries warned us to be careful with Adele. He had defeated one of the descendants of the 7 great sins just to prove his strength. He might have chosen a harder area, yet acted with extreme caution, his judgment and abilities both exceptional. Truly a valuable seedling not to be eliminated. Just because of Aries' warning, if properly guided, he could become a true hunting dog like those from the Arson family. But if he cannot be tamed, the only option left would be the same as with the 6 human clans. Walking down the corridor, Adele mumbled to himself that finally, tomorrow the real combat test begins, and he must prepare thoroughly. Scene shift to the next day, in a great hall. Adele and the other students donned their battle gear and stepped inside. 2 guys behind spoke up, wondering if our class will kill the human hero. One replied, "My clan is the target of theirs, it's truly something to look forward to." Another next to him clenched his fist and raised it high, determined, "Let's show those inferior people the power of Class A." Looking at everyone's confidence, Adele thought to himself that they had sent false information claiming they would attack the 3rd-year dormitory, so the instructors from the Empire Academy would rush to the dorm area. Only one instructor would accompany the 1st-year class outside. If my prediction is correct, that instructor is a 5th circle mage. My goal is to hunt down and kill that person. Facing the protagonist's teammates is already difficult, so I must deal with that instructor first. Afterwards, I have to seize the spirit elixir from the secret base. As soon as everyone had gathered in full, Aries looked down and spoke. "The principal will now give a speech, everyone be silent." The principal slowly stepped forward from the back, looked down below, and said clearly, "Students, the war has now officially begun. You will face the civilians who killed your parents, your brothers and friends among the lives lost in Saitan. No one can escape that pain, all of you have surely witnessed the destruction of precious bonds, and have only been able to hold your family's bodies and wail in grief. Those cowardly and despicable people even desecrated our corpses. But now it's our turn to go hunting humans. In response to the principal's impassioned declaration, the students below shouted in unison to boost morale. Looking at the scene before him, Adele thought to himself that this spectacle was like a frenzy. The principal's speech raised everyone's morale to its peak. As soon as he finished speaking, the principal extended his hand to bless all the students below. Seeing this action, Adele thought to himself, that being able to bless so many people at once, the principal is truly a monster, and it would be very frightening to face him. Then she turned to the instructors and said, "Hey instructors, please lead your students forward." Idea, standing beside her, added, "We will board the ship now, please move in an orderly manner." The ship immediately began to move. At this time, all the students of Class A were already on board. The ship speaker announced, "This is the vessel heading to the Otherworld station. Passengers, please prepare for the upcoming impact." Idea stepped forward cheerfully and said, "We will arrive in about an hour. Please relax comfortably while waiting." Everyone began to relax, but at this moment Adele's gaze became more intense than ever. He thought, Otherworld station, it must have cost hundreds of holy stones to teleport so many students. However, later in the storyline, more and more portals appeared connecting to the human world, and eventually the two worlds merged into one. Noticing his contemplation, Luna looked down and offered a piece of jerky, saying, "Adele, do you want to eat some? It's jerky made from spiritual deer, very delicious." Taking the meat, he said, "Thanks, I'll eat it now." Watching him eat eagerly, she asked, "Is it tasty?" He nodded and replied, "Yeah, it's very good." Then he muttered, "Now, let's check the current situation." A system panel appeared before him, showing race, half-demon, good and evil, temperate, talent, position swapping. Traits, interesting, focus, killing intent, darkness, magic control, arrogant eyes, conception. Mana 1381. Looking at the mana stat, he muttered that his magic was still too weak, even though he trained before sleep every night, the results remain just like this. He must obtain that elixir, maybe then his conception will become stronger. Seeing him continue to brood, Luna called out, asking what he was thinking about so intently. Suddenly, a surge of energy surrounded her body, causing her to flinch and scream, "What is this? My body suddenly." At this moment, not only was she, but Adele too was enveloped in a wave of energy. He looked on and muttered, lifting Luna only a few centimeters, but that was enough for practical combat application. Experimentation is paramount. He must not be careless and must keep evolving. Because in the future, it would be regarded as a transcendent ability, like a distinct domain, since it allows him to manipulate gravity. Alright, this check is fine, but he was still worried that the Knights of the Continent might encounter someone who had once tried to kill him. In the storyline, Leon reported to his superiors that he had fallen into a ravine and died, but he did not actually fall and had instead arrived in the demon world, learning of the Arson family's betrayal, so it could only be presumed that he had died there. Of course, Principal Lucian would think so too through the spy network. But being cautious is never excessive, it's best to find a mask to cover your face. Suddenly, the train car shook violently, startling the other trainees briefly. An announcement came over the loudspeaker, "We are about to arrive." After just a few minutes, the train officially came to a stop. As soon as everyone stepped out, what struck their eyes was a huge mass of magical stones. Adele stepped closer and quietly exclaimed that it was all magical stones. Selling just one would provide enough gold to live on for a whole year. It was really a waste to spend so much on a one-time use teleportation gate. If they had waited a bit longer, the price would have been much lower. Seeing everyone had gathered sufficiently, Idea stepped forward and said, "All right, surely everyone knows where this place is now." Then she came closer, placed her hand on a nearby box, and continued, "Before departure, each person should take one item for themselves." Someone stepped up and handed him a mask. He looked at it and muttered, "Is this really a mask?" Just in time, I was wondering where to find one. Idea took a mask and put it on, explaining that this mask was imbued with magic to reduce recognition ability. It would help them conceal their identities. Those who wear the masks could still recognize each other, so there's no need to worry too much. Then she looked at him and said, "Class leader, please try it on." He nodded and replied, "Yes." Then she turned to everyone and said, "Everyone else should try putting one on too." Having said that, he and the other trainees immediately put their masks on. The moment he put them on, his vision improved significantly, making him let out a slight, "Oh," seeing even better than usual. "I'm starting to like these already." Idea approached and asked, "So, how is it? Can you see more clearly?" He replied, "Yes, it's more effective than you expected." Then she took out some bars and said, "Haha, and also take this." He looked at the wooden-like bars in front of him and asked, "What are these?" She answered, "They're emergency rations. Eat one per day so you won't need any other meals. But don't eat too many when you're on the battlefield, their taste is like dirt mixed with insect guts. This statement made Adele flinch slightly. She stepped over and continued, anyway, just one per day is enough. Got it? He nodded and replied, yes. But inwardly he cursed, haha, that taste is really horrible. After finishing the instructions, Idea said, now, before entering the gate, I will explain the exam procedures. First, in this test, the instructors will not accompany you. As soon as she finished speaking, the students below started murmuring and speculating, not accompanying us? That can't be. Then who will guide us? She immediately reassured them, saying, after all, this test is exclusively for the students, so we've assigned targets suited to your level. If instructors were involved, it wouldn't be a real test anymore. And besides, afterward, the instructors would have to prepare to reopen the gate to bring you back. She continued, therefore, from this moment on, all instructor authority will be transferred to the class leader, and all students must first follow the class leader's orders. Then she stepped forward to pin a flower on his chest, explaining, this is the Enzer flower, the symbol of Saitan, representing the team leader. And take this map as well, I heard the principal say you know how to read maps. Then she turned her back and left, hoping it would help you. He nodded and said, thank you. As soon as everything was done, she said, now open the gate, good luck to you all. As soon as her words ended, the pillar covered in magic stones radiated a huge energy. From behind, spatial gates began to gradually appear. Looking ahead, putting on his mask, Adele murmured to himself, everything is ready. To them this is a strange world, but to me this is hell. At all costs, I will survive and return. Right after, the entire class stepped through the gate together. As they stepped in, the other students seemed unable to bear the atmosphere here and held their noses. Seeing that, Adele thought to himself that because this is an alternate dimension, their bodies cannot adapt. Even I can't endure it for long. Suddenly he saw a light on the other side, making him suspect in his heart that is the exit. Luckily, it seems we just need to go a little further. Then he urged the whole class, everyone, we're almost out. You can see the end of the path. Hurry up. Suddenly, the gate behind them gradually started to close. Seeing that, Adele shouted loudly, the gate is starting to close, run fast. Seeing that, the whole group rushed forward as fast as they could. In the end, only Adele and Luna remained at the back. Seeing this, he grabbed her hand and forcefully pushed her toward the opening gate. Fortunately, she managed to get outside the gate in time. Finally, Adele leapt out just before the gate closed. Outside, before everyone's eyes was the clear, bright scene of the human world. In front of them stood the Imperial Sky Island Academy. The entire class was quite surprised by this. Adele couldn't hide his amazement as he thought, so this is the Imperial Academy. Seeing it in person, it's indeed much more magnificent. Truly worthy of being the pinnacle of human magic and technology. The other students also exclaimed in awe, what is this? That island is a school. How could an entire island float in the sky? Compared to it, Saitan is just like a sandcastle. Prone, seeing this, also stammered, what on earth is that? Adele didn't hesitate to explain to them, as you can see, that's a school. Unlike Saitan, this is a school for humanity. Prone replied, even seeing it with my own eyes, I still can't believe it. Luna, standing beside him, asked anxiously, do we need to go inside? Adele smiled and replied, no need, and we can't either. That place is protected by a barrier so strong that even the dragon tribe cannot break through it. Hearing that, Prone shouted in astonishment, even the dragon tribe can't destroy it? Adele smiled, stroking his chin thoughtfully. I could use the teleportation skill to get in alone. But the main party would immediately punish me. Breaking away from his train of thought, he clapped his hands once and commanded, all right everyone, gather around. He held up the map and described the plan to everyone. According to the map, if we go around the other side of the academy, the target location will appear. We have to move immediately, let's get going. Cut to a forest scene. Everyone was marching through there. Suddenly, Adele realized something and thought to himself, but in this forest, I felt someone's gaze following us all along. Was it an enemy? Behind him, Samuel was glaring at him angrily. Realizing this, he turned back and silently scolded himself, that guy is still acting like that in this situation. This is a life or death moment, yet he only makes me feel more irritated. But in the plan I laid out, Samuel's role is extremely important. His magical talents force me to acknowledge that. I will let it slide this time. Then Adele reached out his hand toward Samuel. Seeing this, Samuel shouted loudly, what are you trying to do? Adele quickly replied, exactly what you see. Adele continued explaining, I know you don't like me, Samuel, and I don't like you either. Samuel frowned and responded grumpily, why all of a sudden say that? Meanwhile, Adele patiently explained, but only this once, we need to cooperate. Hearing that, Samuel expressed his displeasure and retorted, why should I cooperate with someone like you? Putting the bigger picture first, Adele responded, otherwise, everyone here will die because of the two of us. Humanity is not an opponent to be defeated without cooperation, and you, more than anyone, must understand that clearly. Hearing that, Samuel also calmed down more. He waved Adele's hand aside while walking and said, you annoying guy, just this once. Seeing that, Adele smiled in response, I take that as a compliment. You've made the right choice. After achieving his goal, he secretly thought to himself, good, now everything with Samuel is settled, we just need to find the entrance to the secret realm. It must be nearby. Suddenly, a classmate ran over to announce, startling him to turn around, class president, there's something strange ahead. Heeding that, he followed and discovered a door. As soon as Adele saw it, he was delighted and thought to himself, found it. The position on the map matches and it looks exactly like the description. The other academies noticed the door and began to murmur, what's this now? First, it was the floating islands, now even doors can fly. Adele, hearing them, explained that this door is the entrance to a secret realm created by humanity. From here, we will enter inside. A student stepped forward and said, all right, I'll open it. Seeing this, Adele also cheerfully said, go ahead and try. Grasping the handle, the student thought, no problem. Just as he pulled, he was fiercely attacked by a surge of red energy. Adele on the side looked at his friend, who was charred black, thinking secretly, he got shocked. Actually, it only allows teachers of the Empire's Academy to open it. Then Adele turned to look at Samuel and gave a mischievous smile. Seeing that, Samuel asked confusedly, why are you looking at me again? Adele replied, Sir Samuel, you must take action. Hearing this, Samuel didn't understand and asked back, what did you say? Adele began to explain, you have to pump magical energy into the handle to force it open. Hearing this, Samuel disdainfully said, a half-demon can't even do this and yet he's the class leader. Step aside. Adele heard this but still smiled, though inwardly he was angry, thinking, that mouth of his. Then Samuel stepped forward and infused magic into the door handle. After a while, he stopped, the door began to show signs of movement. Then it swung wide open. Seeing this, Adele reminded everyone, hurry, get inside. At the front, he turned back to reassure everyone, fortunately, it seems the traps ahead have not been triggered, so we can proceed with ease. Passing through the gate, they entered a canyon. Prone walked beside Adele, exclaiming, it's larger than I thought, and the atmosphere resembles that of the demon realm's secret landscapes. Adele beside her explained, that makes sense, this secret landscape is the venue for an entire class's practical exam. Samuel moved forward, suspiciously asking, if this is a test site, it should be full of traps and monsters. Adele immediately replied, that's right. Samuel continued, then why aren't we ambushing outside? Adele heard this and silently praised him internally, oh, that's a sharp question. Then Adele smiled and replied, exactly. If we were to ambush, the best time would be right after they finish the test, when they're still tired and careless. But there are several reasons why I insisted on entering the secret landscape now. First, I know all the paths here without triggering any traps. That means the humans will still fall into the traps as planned. Second, we will leave before they arrive. Hearing this, Samuel asked again, if we just go in and out immediately, then what is the point of entering? Adele didn't answer but just chuckled. Seeing this, Samuel said angrily, don't laugh, you're irritating me. At that moment, Adele finally explained that this place not only resembles the atmosphere of the demon world, but was also created by humans to find a way to conquer the demon world. Hearing that, Samuel responded in surprise, meaning that. Adele raised one finger and replied, that's right. Those artificial secret realms are like treasures within the demon world, in other words, this place contains treasure. He continued, we are almost there. We've arrived. What lies ahead are 6 diverging paths. Looking at the several paths ahead, Samuel complained, oh my god, are there really 6 branches at this crossroads? Prone continued, which way should we go? Adele stood silently for a while, as if observing, searching for something. Then he stepped toward the cliff wall nearby to assess the situation. Seeing that, Prone spoke up to stop him, that's not the right path. Before she could finish her sentence, his hand had already touched a rock on the cliff face, causing the rock to sink inward and activate some mechanism. He cheerfully said, we must not take any of these 6 paths. No sooner had his arm left the stone than a door suddenly opened right next to where he was standing. He continued, if we take this way, we will arrive at our destination immediately. Everyone, follow me. Faced with his decisive action, Samuel asked, how do you know about this path? He didn't answer aloud but thought to himself, how do I know? Of course, I know well, because these are arrangements I myself have made. After some time moving forward, the sunset had faded gradually behind the mountain ranges. They arrived at a vast open space, where a chest sat lonely on the ground. He approached and said, there is a chest here. Prone asked curiously, what's inside? He answered, this is my first time here, so I don't really know. Hearing that, Prone nodded, so it means you didn't set this up. Then he suggested, well, then let's open it. As soon as he finished speaking, he opened the chest, revealing only a water bottle and a bag of sand inside. Looking at these two seemingly useless items in his hands, Samuel spoke up, wondering what use this pile could have. He explained that while the bag of sand seemed useless, the water bottle appeared to be extremely useful. He slowly unscrewed the bottle's cap and began pouring all the water inside out. Seeing a large amount of water pouring out relentlessly, Prone exclaimed in astonishment, "Oh my God, all this water comes from that small bottle?" He nodded and explained that the bottle could hold enough water for dozens of people, so they wouldn't need to risk searching for water anymore. Faced with this interesting discovery, Samuel next to him commented chidingly, how embarrassing, to hide such a simple water bottle in such a secret place. He thought silently to himself that, in fact, strangers would be the ones to come and bring tools to kill. Snapping out of his thoughts, he put away the two items and turned to the group, saying, "I've taken everything, let's go. A battle is about to take place here, so be sure to check the surroundings carefully." After a while of moving, they had now exited the cave. The group found themselves in a vast forest. Adele spoke up, "Now I will assign tasks to you all." He looked toward Samuel and said, "You will take on the reconnaissance mission." Samuel questioned, "Why do I have to do that?" He smiled and replied that you are the most suitable person for this mission. Samuel argued back, "Isn't it your role as class president to do this work?" He chuckled and answered, "No, the only person who can carry out this mission is you. I am certain that you are the best in stealth magic and magical energy, so that is why I trust you with this task." Seeing his talents recognized by others, Samuel looked delighted, then shyly looked away, letting out a slight cold snort but still agreed to accept the mission. All right. Seeing this attitude from him, Adele thought to himself, he seems happy. Could it be that from the start he wanted to take on the reconnaissance mission? I feel reassured because Samuel will take on this mission. Since I can't leave this position, I will command and monitor the situation from the beginning. Samuel turned toward him and said, "All right then, there's no other way but to agree if you plead with me like that." Before he could finish speaking, he interrupted, "Ah, you won't be scouting alone." Hearing that, Samuel's attitude immediately changed. Happily he asked again, "So, will another student accompany me?" He directed his gaze behind himself and shook his head to deny, "No, it won't be a student." Immediately after, he took out a small bird that surprised both Samuel and Prone. Prone approached, repeatedly wondering, "Isn't this a hawk? Moreover a hawk that's excellent at reconnaissance and gathering information?" Looking at the small bird in front of him, he thought to himself, "It looks like a sparrow, but in the demon realm, they call it a hawk." He continued to explain, "It's a bird raised by Master Ares, and this time I borrowed it. We have become very close, I even named it Seiho." Samuel reached out to take the small bird, questioning, "Master Ares, did you intend to kill him? I don't think there's any reason for him to treat you well now." Seeing Samuel's words made sense, but thinking back, he had become close to it after feeding it for a while. He wasn't sure if it would side with him as much as with Master Ares, so he decided to try. Immediately, from his body, a dense dark energy emanated, enveloping the small bird, causing its eyes to glow red. He wanted to control the bird according to his will, but it instantly flew up into the sky, turned abruptly, and looked directly at him with a probing gaze. This startled him briefly, thinking, "Why won't you come back to me?" But then something appeared before his eyes that made him flinch. At that moment, a small screen appeared in the sky, showing his image through the eyes of the small bird. He looked at it and questioned, "That's my face." Then he glanced up at the little bird and continued speaking, "So that's it, it shares information through its eyes." After gaining a loyal disciple, he immediately gave an order, "Now you have to accompany this person for a while." As soon as it received the order, the little bird instantly chirped a few times as if it understood its master's meaning. Then it flew over and perched on Samuel's head, much to his astonishment. This startled Samuel briefly. He flailed his hands a few times, angrily shouting, "Get down, don't sit on my head from now on, you inferior creature." It seemed to understand his words and immediately flew away, only to then dart back and peck repeatedly at his head, causing Samuel to yelp a few times. Standing beside him, he explained, "Seiho can share information with me, so you must protect it well." Samuel nodded in response, "All right." Then he turned to Prone and said, "As for you, I want you to lead the trainees while I'm away. Your ability is seduction, isn't it?" Prone nodded and replied, "That's correct. It helps allies become stronger for a short time, but for some reason, it has no effect on you." He raised his hand teasingly and said, "This is likely because Miss Prone lacks enough charm." Hearing this, Prone shouted angrily, "Huh, that's impossible." Then she returned to the main issue, "But why are you leaving?" He explained, "When trainees from the Royal Academy arrive here, their instructors come along as well, and I will be the one facing off against that instructor." Before his somewhat reckless action, Samuel, standing beside him, voiced his concern. "What? No matter how strong he was, it would be really difficult to face a lecturer alone. Seeing Samuel worried about him, he teased, "Are you worried about me now? I never thought I'd live to see today." Feeling mocked about his concern, Samuel angrily shouted, "Then go die." Adele immediately changed his tone and said, "I was just joking. I'm only going out to be on guard in case that lecturer shows up, but if he doesn't come, I'll come right back to escort everyone immediately." He thought to himself that the guy would definitely come. More precisely, he had to come, at least to increase his mana. After assigning the tasks, he spoke up, "Now that everyone's duties have been assigned, Samuel will scout ahead, Miss Prone will stay behind to command, and I will confront the human lecturer." Prone questioned, "So what should we do now?" Faced with this unexpected question, he pondered silently for a few seconds. This also caused the other two to show a few question marks on their faces. After some thought, he said, "I'm hungry now, let's go eat first. And it's best if we camp here for a day." Faced with these somewhat cliched words, Samuel, standing nearby, angrily shouted, "Is that all you want to say?" He smiled and replied, "Ah, Samuel, you must leave immediately. Please check if any classes from the Royal Academy are heading out for a field lesson." Feeling dismissed, Samuel questioned, "Well, will I get to eat too?" He waved his hand and said, "Hello, goodbye, and good luck." Then he looked toward Prone and said, "Let's go." "So it turns out I get to eat a meal, but my comrades will starve to death." At this moment, Samuel stood silently like a statue, reflecting on the harsh treatment from him. Deeper inside the forest, Prone suddenly swore loudly, "Damn it, is this all there is?" At this time, he was holding the ready-to-eat ration given by Professor Idea and enjoying it thoroughly. In contrast to him, the young lady beside him was continuously vomiting. The other trainees suffered the same fate, they were constantly vomiting. In this scene, he could still eat well. He thought to himself, they truly are descendants of noble families. The taste is disgusting, but in this situation, there is no choice but to eat it because nutrition is essential for fighting. But the flavor resembles the corpse of dried worms. Then he turned his gaze toward Luna beside him, who was still enjoying the dried worms deliciously. Under Adele's gaze directed at him, the girl turned around puzzled, asking why he was staring at her like that. He just gave a wry smile and replied, "It's nothing." Then she made an offer, "Do you want some dried meat?" He didn't want to relive the experience of eating dried worms, so he immediately stood up and declined, "No, I can't eat while the other students are suffering. Just keep it, maybe we'll need it later." Faced with his decisive action, Luna exclaimed, "At times like this, you seem much kinder than I thought, Adele." He then teased, "I've always been kind from the start, haven't I? Haha, I always get misunderstood because my appearance looks harsh." But anyway, he wondered if Samuel was okay right now. He looked up at the sky, the scene that appeared was the Royal Academy. Looking at it, he thought to himself, it seems Seiho is monitoring the Royal Academy near him. And currently, both are doing very well. Following the direction of Samuel's pointing finger, suddenly a large bright spot appeared ahead. He focused on it and spoke with curiosity, "Wait, something is coming." It was a golden carriage drawn by horses with flaming heads. Just by looking, it was clear the carriage belonged to a person of power. He exclaimed inwardly, "That carriage can't be." Adele marveled inwardly, how could that carriage travel back and forth between the Royal Academy and the ground? Such overwhelming power seems only found in legends. Samuel also mumbled something, but Adele couldn't hear clearly. He thought to himself, unable to communicate, truly maddening. Now all he could do was hope that he got the hint and would retreat. In just a few seconds of movement, the carriage safely descended to the ground. Looking at it, Adele whispered inside, "This time it's troublesome. They've arrived faster than I expected." Someone stepped out of the carriage, a golden eagle emblem cast in gold displayed on his chest. From the memories he had, this person was Bisaha, and he was the first target that Adele was determined to kill. He was a Wind Element Magic System Education Officer, a powerful expert at the 5-cycle realm, but specialized in theory like Robolt and not skilled in combat. Adele thought he could still fight. Then he turned his gaze toward the people behind, who were now paying attention, especially a tall young man with a giant hammer strapped to his back. That guy was the son of Count Leon Tyrius. Beside him were two stunningly beautiful young ladies, probably his personal companions. He was one of the main characters, a key figure in the main plot. He was even stronger than Bisaha, but he usually joined the team 30 minutes late because he was busy betting with the female students. That's the opportunity, if those two combined, no one in Class A would survive. Then the camera turned towards Samuel, who was turning away to leave. Adele quietly breathed a sigh of relief inside. Samuel was retreating. He turned back to the others and said, "Everyone, act quickly now." At his urgent tone, Prone stepped forward, asking if something was wrong. He explained that the target was advancing toward us. She startled and replied, "Really? It's finally starting." He nodded, yes, quickly erase the traces and check your weapons. I will stay outside the secret realm to deal with the human sect leader, while you all go inside and wait to attack when the human trainees are exhausted. Luna approached and asked, will that sect leader really come? He nodded in confirmation. He is even stronger than sect leader Ares, and honestly, I'm not sure if I can defeat him. This made Luna behind him worried, no way. He remained calm, thinking to himself, if someone stronger than Bisaha comes here, it truly is terrifying. He turned to Prone, I trust you will lead the trainees well. She nodded affirmatively, don't worry. Then from afar, a shout rang out along with Samuel's appearance behind. He shouted anxiously, the humans are coming. He nodded, just in time, I also confirmed through Seiho. He assigned the mission, Samuel, you also enter the secret realm, and bring Seiho along. Samuel was about to nod in agreement but then asked, are you really going to face the Inquisitor alone? He nodded to confirm, yes, that's what I have to do, there's no more time, quickly open the side gate. Samuel turned his back and walked away but didn't forget to remind him, don't die on me. He smirked and replied, I'll try, and be careful with that sun-kissed blonde human. Samuel nodded, okay, I'll keep an eye on him. Then he loudly shouted at everyone, move aside, I'm opening the gate. Watching their backs as they left, he thought to himself, I hope this group can hold out until I finish dealing with Bisaha, though I'm not even sure if I can beat Ba. Well, I should start preparing a position for myself. He quickly used his blink skill to teleport himself onto a high tree branch, directing his gaze toward the gate below. His face became very serious, raising his alertness. Everything is ready now, all that's left is to wait for them to arrive. At this moment, Inquisitor Bisaha led a group of trainees into the forest. Then he immediately stopped, turned around and said to everyone, halt. He approached the door and reminded them, everyone, this is today's practice area. When they appeared, Adele's vigilance also rose to its maximum. Returning to the trainees, while the Inquisitor was still reminding them, on this side, Leon Tyrius turned to tease a silver-haired girl, speaking up, hey, Sylvia. In response to his slightly dirty attitude, she immediately shrugged off his arm and shouted angrily, saying that his despicable behavior would be the last time today and that he should prepare to pay the price for the bet. Hearing this, he just smiled without replying, then continued, so Sylvia will become mine. Seeing this guy causing a disturbance, Bisaha spoke up to remind him, hey, stop talking nonsense and focus. He went on to explain, inside here, you all know what to do. The team that successfully breaches first will receive a reward. Give it your all. Upon hearing this, all the trainees responded in unison, yes, sir. Then he gave the order, all right, enter the secret realm one by one. Standing above to observe, Adele thought silently. They enter, bright human trainees full of vitality, while we are only raised like pawns for war. The difference is indeed stark. Yet despite Tyrius constantly flirting, he continued with his work, speaking out. Sylvia, as promised, I will start in 30 minutes. Do well. After all, you will be mine anyway. Hearing this, Sylvia turned her back and left, leaving a mocking remark, no way, wake up from your delusion. Tyrius smiled and said, aha, we'll see. Seeing them hesitate to enter, Bisaha reminded, what are you standing there for? Get inside now. Sylvia bowed apologetically, while Tyrius put on a calm face and said, I understand. Sitting above to observe, he now saw all the trainees entering inside. The door was also closed and in the end only Bisaha remained. He looked toward the gate, muttering, everyone's already inside. Then he turned around, scanning the surroundings. Adele thought to himself from above, he even checked around, truly careful. After observing with his naked eyes, Bisaha suddenly emitted a green mana aura that spread throughout the surrounding area. It created a circular beam of light. Immediately after, the entire forest was illuminated by the energy just unleashed. In front of the dazzling light, Adele luckily grabbed a branch, barely keeping himself from falling to the ground. He sighed softly and sighed, dispersing his power again to confirm, if I blink any more, I'd be detected. After finding nothing, Bisaha spoke, as expected no one's there, now let's go. He then headed toward the secret chamber. Just as Adele predicted, now all that's needed is to keep a safe distance and follow him. After moving deeper into the forest, suddenly Bisaha stopped as if he had noticed something. Behind a tree, Adele had also blinked into position. He only made a very slight noise, but this time it reached Bisaha's ears. He startled and spoke up, clearly sensing someone, or was it just a hallucination? He continued moving and approached a tree trunk. Touching it, he muttered, what kind of terror is this demon clan planning, making me come all the way here? They should have just wiped me out. In response to his strange action, Adele observed from above, thinking to himself, what is he doing in front of that tree? Below, Bisaha channeled magical power into the opposite tree, murmuring, never mind, as long as it serves my great experiment. Then from a small tree, suddenly a swirl of magic appeared around it, causing the tree to shake violently. In just a few seconds, the small tree had transformed into a towering giant tree. This made Adele flinch momentarily, just as he thought, that tree is a protective mechanism, if disturbed recklessly, it would have already been blown away. Standing before the tree for a while, Bisaha spoke up, "There's no sign anyone has come here before, so checking it should be fine." But then he suddenly sensed something. His entire body was enveloped by a flow of mana. When he turned back to look behind him, his protective mana layer was being attacked by the blade that Adele had thrown. Looking at it, he wondered, what the hell is that? As soon as the words left his mouth, Adele appeared before him, looking at him with eyes cold as bullets. Adele spoke coldly, "What a pity, I almost had you."